All right. Good evening, everyone. It's time to get started. All right. Good evening and welcome to the August 3rd, 2022 Grants Pass City Council meeting. Rob's going to be coming in a little late tonight. We start our meetings off with a moment of silence, so please join me for that. And please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we do have Councilor Pell coming in late tonight and everybody else is here. Try not to touch my mic, it brings in the aliens. I don't know what it's doing it over there too. It's not just me. We're okay? Okay. They say we're okay. All right, first up on tonight's agenda is a public hearing on a resolution adopting the 3-year annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. And hello, Ann.
Good evening. I wanted to mention to you that my packet has a few other items in it, documents to look at other than the PowerPoint. Some of them are just relevant to CDBG and what some of our partners have done in the past year. You also have an envelope from the Boys and Girls Club, which I believe are thank you notes to all of you. They were brought in by Greg Rowe from the Boys and Girls Club. I also wanted to mention to you that Amber Neek and I have been working on a weatherization rehabilitation program that we're going to manage through the city. And we spent months putting it together, and we began the outreach on Monday. And we have a story that was in the Courier on Sunday. And then we have our questionnaire or the application and frequently asked questions that we sent out to, other areas in the city and to other agencies and things like that. Amber was very gracious to go and drop off packets to a lot of people here in town. It's also on the website, and that is part of your packet there, the extra documents that I gave to you so you can see what the application looks like. And the open enrollment period runs from August 1 to the 30th of September. And then at that time, Amber and I will gather the applications together. We will present them to the Housing Authority Committee, and then they will make a final determination of the selection of applicants. Also, included with that weatherization, I believe Councilor Lovelace had asked whether new AC units could be purchased under the weatherization, and that is not eligible. That would fall into the rehab part. Also, the HVAC, if they have existing heat pumps or AC units, yes, those would fall in the weatherization portion of it. I also wanted to mention that Kat Bonney with Common Connections will be helping us with some of the weatherization projects as well, since she works with the county on that same side. Also within your packet is a photograph, a couple photos of a home that Rebuilding Together just finished rehabbing, and they have before and after pictures. So we've been, I think we're at about 7 or 8 that they have finished and completed, and we have about 9 more on the waiting list to go for the rehabilitation portion. We also have public facilities. We're talking about putting in ADA accessibility at I think it's Fruitdale Park, and then Morrison Centennial Park. So we're looking at that to use some CDBG funds for those. And then to home bridging, which was at the last few meetings. They broke ground on the 26th of June, so they have already begun their project. So tonight we're going to be looking at year 3 for the annual action plan of the 5-year program. And the activities which we'll be funding in this year 3 of this 5-year program. The purpose, of course, is a public hearing per our citizen participation plan, and then adopting the resolution at the end of the presentation if you so feel agreeable to that. Of course, relationship to council goals, provide cooperative shared leadership involving council, staff, and community, enhance community safety, encourage economic opportunities, facilitate substantial manageable growth, and maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure. The CDBG purpose is to provide flexible grants to assist cities and counties in the development of viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities, principally benefiting low and moderate income persons. The major program areas are affordable, decent housing, which you do have in your packet there, the goals. It's 5-year goals also. Addressing and preventing homelessness, non-housing community development and public facilities, economic development, public services, which are limited to 15% of the annual award. This page shows that for to meet the national objectives, you have to have 70% minimum predominant LMI that benefit from the funds. 20% is allowable for administration, and then of course 15% is the max that you can have for public services. The 5-year goals are on a sheet in your packet there, and they follow along the same that we've been discussing. Today is August 3rd. We've already done a survey, which we had a meeting back in April that showed the results of the survey and what the community felt was most important. And then we had it open, the draft for public comment for 30 days. And then today is the hearing for the adoption of. The last day that I can submit this to HUD is August 12th. And then the program year begins October 1. This here is schedule of the funding for the year. You have a larger copy in your packet, so it's a little bit easier to read. As I said before, this is the 3rd year of the 2020-24 5-year consolidated plan. Any projects or activities which began in the 1st and 2nd year, which are in progress, they will continue into this 3rd year until they are completed. And then any funds from prior years will be associated with those years and funded accordingly. The revenue source, of course, is HUD CDBG funds. $375,906 is what is appropriated for this year 3. And if that should change at any time, then the allocations would be adjusted accordingly. So the call to action is today, approve the resolution. My deadline to submit is August 15. You can approve the resolution as presented, approve with revisions. Of course, if you do revisions, that has to be done tonight so that I have time to submit it to HUD. And of course, if it's not approved, then we do not receive the funds for this year. Any questions?
Brian. Brian, then Val.
Thank you, Ann. On the big sheet that has the funding breakdown of the different categories,
Yes.
in the first category, affordable and decent housing, the last line on there says assist site acquisition and improvements for affordable housing. And I'm seeing that that number is tripling this year. And I'm just wondering if we have a plan for that, since it looks like about half of the funds are going there this year.
We do have a plan for that. We have the Child Advocacy Center that is going to be new build on that, I believe, for this coming year. We have set some funds aside for public infrastructure, and that would fall into that category. I'm not sure what the cost will be, so that's why I put more funds into that category. Also, if we have some funds left over, some of that may also go to the home bridging for the subdivision for the public infrastructure for their last road that they're going to be putting in.
Thank you.
Valerie.
Yeah, I was wondering where exactly, I thought maybe that was the home bridging that we did, or was that previous years? Is that money that we used that had not been used in previous years?
That is correct.
Okay.
This is a whole new year.
Okay.
So this money allotted here would be the money for year 3. And home bridging does have what you all discussed and agreed on was funds from prior years.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. And then another question that I had, you mentioned, and I'm very excited to hear about the rehabilitation and the money going and developing and finding that program. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I give you and Amber kudos for working together to get that, because that is very important to keep people in their homes. So thank you for that. And then you mentioned that after you get the applications, is it the Josephine County Housing Authority that will make the decision?
No,
Or is
it
the
will
Housing
be the Housing Advisory Committee.
Okay, okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification. Thank
I
you.
may have misspoke.
Any other questions? Joel?
Good presentation, thank you. I was wondering why under emergency housing assistance and all the others for homelessness prevention, that the funding actually went down this year.
It went down because the more public service people that ask for those funds, then it decreases it for everyone. And we had one more this year that was asking for funds, which was Welcome Home Oregon. They do the rehabilitation, and they have a house, a transient house for individuals coming out of incarceration.
Which is a wonderful thing. So if I understood you correctly, and I don't think I did, the reason it went down is because more people put in for the grant?
That is correct.
So this is the total amount though, correct? That's shown on the spreadsheet?
Yes, on the spreadsheet down off over to the right-hand side at the end in the blue, it says 56,380 something. That is the 15% for public services that we can allow for this year's grant.
Okay, so when I look at 2022, 2023, it shows for emergency housing assistance, 8,055.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and that's down from 9,933 last year.
That is correct.
And that's down because more people put in for it?
Yes, that is correct.
So is this the grant per application and not the total amount? I don't understand. I'm not the smartest person on the planet.
I think it's
You would have to
slicing
ask
the
me
pie
about
in more.
numbers.
I think it's just slicing the pie in more pieces
Yes.
is what you're saying.
Exactly. So we're allowed only 15% of the yearly award. So that 15% is the 56,385. So then I have to take all the people that are public service and divide that into that amount to arrive at a dollar amount where it's equal for all.
And last year, Welcome Home was 0, and this year they received, and that's why, because they received a piece of the pie, and that decreased it for everyone.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I guess we don't have any further questions. This is a public hearing, so is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? Step up, make sure that microphone light is on, and tell us your name. Push the button at the bottom of the mic, the other, yep.
How's that?
Good.
Greg Rowe from the Boys and Girls Club, as you all know. So my first grade marketing department made you those cards. So it won't be any surprise when you look at it. But anyway, I just want to thank you for your support of all these different programs. Every one of these agencies is doing great work. And we actually work with most of these other agencies that are being funded. Whether it's HUD housing, all the kids that you guys help provide those free scholarships for, or our teen training program for jobs. We're very closely tied to that. So thank you for supporting all of those different organizations, not just the club. You guys really did save the club during COVID years, and I'll be forever grateful for that. So thank you very much. So, and any questions? No. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Would anybody else like to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to council. Valerie.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to approve the resolution adopting the 2022 through 23 Year 3 Annual Action Plan for the CDBG program as presented.
Is there a second? Rick, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, the motion was to approve the action plan, and Valerie, you made the motion. How do you vote?
I vote yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. All right, and Councillor Pell's coming in the back, so he'll be here to join us for this next topic, which is a legislative public hearing. Pull out my script here. All right, at this time I'll open the public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Development Code Article 14 regarding certain uses of the Municipal Code Title 11 marijuana businesses. We will begin the hearing with the staff report, followed by public comment, and then the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to consider this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards those criteria. The criteria which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. It is important to remember if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on the issue. We will now begin the hearing with the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, Brad Clark with Community Development. Jason Mackey was the assigned planner on this. He did the majority of the work and worked with Mr. Hayes, Don Hayes, who is the applicant who's here tonight. I will do my best to kind of walk through the highlights. This in your packet starts on page 75. So what's before you tonight is an ordinance submitted, as I said, by a private party, Mr. Don Hayes, amending two portions of the city code. Well, one is Article 14, that's the development code, and then the other is Title 11, that's the municipal code. Both of those sections have certain provisions related to marijuana businesses. So if approved, the amendment would reduce the minimum buffer between adult businesses, which is what a marijuana business is classified as, and schools, public libraries, public parks, commercial and residential recreational facilities, and state licensed daycare. So those are the land uses that the code says you have to buffer from. So just a few highlights. I'm not going to read all of this, but basically March of '94 is when the original ordinance was created by the city. related to adult use buffers. July of 17 is just after the state of Oregon adopted its marijuana rules and the city of Grants Pass adopted its local rules related to marijuana. And then in June 21, the council changed the definition of adult business, which excluded businesses that allow underage patrons on the premises. So, for example, a restaurant with a bar would no longer be classified as an adult business. It doesn't really pertain directly to tonight, other than we're talking about the adult use section. And then in February of this year, we held a pre-application conference with Mr. Hayes and talked about the specific property at 306 Northwest 6th Street, also known as the Redwood Hotel. And we did inform the applicant at that time that a text amendment would not apply to one property. A text amendment would apply to, citywide. But we just wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission and the council knows that that's, sort of what initiated the application. And then in April, we did get a formal text amendment and began to process that. The bottom note there on this slide just lets you know that that these text amendment notifications don't get sent individually to property owners. They get published through our normal website and through the courier and other locations. But to date, no comment have been received from the public. We do have some information in the presentation here about the Planning Commission and how they reviewed the application. Couple of highlights in terms of the state level and how these relate. So the Oregon Revised Statute 475C basically says that you, City Council, all cities and counties and grants in the state of Oregon can put reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions when it comes to marijuana businesses. That does include medical marijuana dispensaries, which we'll talk about in a minute. So basically, the state says you can put these kinds of standards: limit hours of operation, conditions on the manner in which the site operates, reasonable requirements related to public access, and then reasonable limits on where they can be located. So those are kind of the four broad categories that you as a city council can put on these types of businesses according to the state legislature. Specifically to medical marijuana dispensaries, and Mr. Hayes did submit an amendment to his application since the Planning Commission finished their public hearing. And that amendment does focus on medical marijuana more than recreational marijuana. So we just wanted to include a piece here about what the state statute says about medical marijuana, and that's in ORS 475C. And it does have standards related to medical marijuana as well. It may not be located within 1,000 feet of a public elementary or secondary school, a private or parochial elementary or secondary school, and there's some other provisions related to all these, and not related within 1,000 feet of another medical marijuana dispensary. Now there is a kind of a catch to this, and that's on this next slide. So 475.840 says that medical marijuana dispensaries located within 1,000 feet, but there's a couple of clauses here. So the first one, the medical marijuana is not located within 500 feet. I shouldn't have skipped over the first part there. A medical marijuana dispensary may be located within 1,000 feet of a school if the following are met, and that is that it's not located within 500 feet of a public elementary or secondary school for which attendance is compulsory, and that's getting to sort of some distinctions in school definitions. Same thing with the private parochial. And then the Oregon Health Authority does determine, in this case, it's not the city of Grants Pass, it would be OHA. If there is a physical or geographic barrier capable of preventing children from traversing to the premises of the medical marijuana dispensary. So again, that's up to their rules. Our understanding from talking to their staff is basically, there's different ways to measure distance from a facility to a school, whether you're walking along the sidewalk or maybe you do it as the crow flies. Maybe there's some other factors involved. Maybe there's some significant barriers, you know, bridges or canals or something that are. So basically, this is saying that OHA can make a case-by-case determination. And then the last one is basically a grandfathering type clause, which doesn't apply in this case. So the proposed amendment for you tonight affects Article 14 of the Development Code, and it does not include a purpose statement. So it's really not possible to determine consistency with that particular section. So there is room for subjectivity here. The Planning Commission did not believe that the proposal to change the buffer from 1,000 to 300 was in the spirit of the purpose statement, but again, that's up to City Council. Article 1 does state that the purpose of the entire development code is to implement the policies of the comprehensive plan and to coordinate city regulations. And the comp plan does have a lot of policies, but none really that speak specifically to marijuana. So I guess we're just underscoring here that there's not a lot with the first criterion for you to base on in terms of the purpose statement or the comp plan, because neither one really speaks specifically to medical or recreational marijuana. So here are three kind of important definitions related to this proposal tonight. Council should be fairly familiar with these since last year we had a pretty substantial change to this section. But adult business is any person, group, firm that prohibits admission to its entire premises at all times to anyone younger than 21 years of age. Adult use is very similar to that. It's just talking about the use that's on the premises. And then a marijuana business, this is probably the more important definition that's in the code, and it breaks it into 6 different subcategories of what a marijuana business is. I put an asterisk on marijuana dispensaries because right now the City of Grants Pass Development Code doesn't differentiate between medical and recreational. It just says marijuana dispensaries. So anytime our code talks about marijuana business, it's inclusive of both. So here's the existing code section, 14.630 sub 2C, which talks about adult businesses that have less than 10,000 square feet and enclosed building space that is open to the public. The adult business is located more than 1,000 feet from the following. So that, and then the no drive-up facilities can be permitted for marijuana businesses. So those are kind of the two pertinent sections that we're talking about. Title 11 of the Municipal Code, very similar language. So here's the original proposal that Mr. Hayes submitted. It basically strikes out the 1,000 and puts 300. And then instead of measuring the distance between a marijuana facility and the school or a daycare or a park by a straight line, the proposal is to change it to the entrance of the following. And I didn't list them here, but they're on the previous slide. So the entrance to the facility. And then there's also a proposal to allow drive-up facilities, drive-up services at these businesses. The Municipal Code amendment, again, these two sections are identical language between the Development Code and the Muni Code. So the potential impact on this, there's kind of really two main ones. It's that it would reduce the number of buildings that are impacted by current adult use buffer restrictions, obviously by changing it from 1,000 feet separation to 300. We did include in here that changing how the adult use buffer is measured by using a property line compared to an entrance door, would also have the effect of potentially allowing a few more businesses in. Some of them it wouldn't make any difference at all. This is really going to depend on a sort of block by block analysis. The Municipal Code amendment pertains only to marijuana businesses, while the Development Code pertains to all adult businesses. So that would have basically a bigger impact if you change the development code as proposed than the municipal code. These two slides just show you kind of, it may be a little difficult to see up there, but on the one on the right, you may be able to see some white spots that sort of pop out of the map there. The center sort of salmon color circle, if you can see this orange spot, you know, we took that as kind of a center, and then you look at what kind of buffer distances are there. The different colors represent the different types of uses that have to be buffered. So daycares are one color, parks are one color, schools are one color. So if you reduce it from, and you can see on the left, the existing 1,000-foot buffer, there's not a single spot of white. The entire area is covered, and meaning there would be no place for marijuana businesses to locate. If you change it to 300, it does open up a few locations that are no longer within that buffer. So the next 4 slides, again, they're in your packet, so I'm not going to read them, but they basically, these are the required criteria that you have to review and you have to find affirmatively before you can approve a text amendment application. So the first one has to do with the purpose of the subject articles. The second one is it consistent with really the entire, the provisions of the code. The third one, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the fourth one, that it's consistent with the functions of the master transportation plan. That one's not relevant. On the first 3 criteria, the Planning Commission did not find that the application met any of those. And so for that reason, the Planning Commission is recommending denial to you of this application. There is no criterion in the municipal code that's listed. And you do have both before you tonight. That's really up to your discretion on how you change the municipal code. On the development code, those 4 criteria you have to explicitly meet and give us reasons why you support it. So the last thing here, there was a couple of additional exhibits, and those are on page 128 and 132 of your packet, and these are the ones that I mentioned earlier that Mr. Hayes submitted. So if you look on page 128, actually, I guess that's the start of it. 131, you can see that there's an exception for medical marijuana dispensaries. MMDs shall be allowed to have drive-through services. Page 133, this is Exhibit 3, and this is where you see that the MMDs shall be governed by Oregon Health Authority. So rather than focusing on recreational, the revision would be to focus just on the medical marijuana, and that would be regulated by the state Oregon Health Authority in terms of those rules that I showed you earlier. And then similarly on page 134, there's the exception that medical marijuana shall be allowed to have a drive-through service subject to Oregon Health Authority rules. I already mentioned that the Planning Commission recommended denial of this application, and the call to action is there in front of you. You can approve the text amendment, you can deny it, you can make revisions. So there's a text amendment, there's a lot of latitude before you.
Thank you, Brad. Council, do you have any questions for staff? Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. On slide 7, it talks about the state regulations, and it says medical marijuana dispensary, it talks about a private or parochial elementary school teaching children. And I know that the site that we're talking about tonight, I know River Valley Church has, I don't know if it's a school or a daycare within 500 feet. I don't know if anyone up here knows if that would qualify under this category.
I did not look into that or get information about, the exact operation, which is, there's a lot of definition issues when you kind of start defining schools that we would need to know, but it's a valid point.
Okay, thank you.
DJ?
Yeah, just for clarification's sake, after the UAPC hearing, there was a supplement to the application about clarification for medical marijuana dispensaries. The reason I'm asking is just for clarification. Is it correct that the UAPC didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on those amendments?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? All right, did the applicant want to speak on behalf of this? Yeah, just hand it to Brian at the end there. And make sure the microphone is on up here in the center. And Karen, is the time limit?
Can you hear me?
10 minutes.
Don Hayes, 306 Northwest 6th Street.
Chloe Hayes.
And we're an advocate for declassification of the medical marijuana and substantiate, the difference between that you have to be a card holder to even come in a facility, according to state regulations. It was our intention to try to figure out how to have these distances modified, but I understand that it would maybe present a problem to maybe what you would classify as an adult use. We don't think that it's an adult use if a child that has a license, a medical license, to be able to come into the facility that would be underage and be able to purchase a cannabis product for their particular condition. So we are really just advocating for the council's guidance to see if it's a possibility of excluding the medical scenario. This would be the only medical facility in the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon already has given us and passed us, as far as the location is concerned, to be such a facility. So we would appreciate it if you could discover the opportunity for this particular scenario to take place.
I had wrote a letter that I believe you guys have in your packet. I'm just going to go ahead and read it off. This is how I feel on the medical marijuana dispensary. I'm Chloe Hayes, and I am here on the behalf of SOW LCC to bring up the current classification of medical marijuana dispensaries. Medical dispensaries are classified as an adult use only currently. I believe that this classification is incorrect because of the current recreational marijuana laws in Oregon and the types of clients medical dispensaries currently serve. Current recreational marijuana law allows recreational dispensaries to sell marijuana to anyone over the age of 21 and anyone under the age of 21 with an Oregon Medical Marijuana Program Card or OMMP license. If any adult in Josephine County wanted to purchase marijuana, they would not go to a medical dispensary, they would go to a recreational dispensary, whether they have a medical license or not. This is due to recreational marijuana prices being almost the same as medical, and the high price and difficulty in going through the licensing process. The majority of the medical marijuana dispensary clients are people who need stronger medical grade marijuana and or the CBD that is in the medical grade. For debilitating medical conditions, including cancer, glaucoma, epilepsy, and many others. These clients are often children under the age of 18, with parents seeking a less stoner vibe when picking up prescriptions of marijuana. Adults with OMMP cards seeking a more medical and scientific environment also would be specific clientele. These reasons show that if a medical marijuana dispensary opened in Grants Pass, the clients of the business would not be adults only, but instead the majority would likely be underage. Because of this, I request that the business classification of medical marijuana dispensaries be changed to another classification, perhaps the same as a pharmacy. There are no medical marijuana dispensaries, only offering medical marijuana in Josephine County, currently 0. So any medical marijuana users must enter recreational dispensaries for their prescriptions. That means children and adults might be forced to enter environments that differ from their beliefs. We at SOW want to open a medical marijuana only dispensary for Grants Pass OMMP patients who want more pharmaceutical environment. With the lack of medical marijuana dispensaries in Josephine County, many OMMP growers are having trouble getting rid of their medical grade marijuana. Because of this, pounds of marijuana are being thrown out and burned, making Oregon lose on thousands in possible taxes. We are trying to open a medical marijuana dispensary on 110 Northwest E Street to serve OMMP patients and growers in Josephine County. However, because of the current classification of medical marijuana dispensaries, we are unable to open our doors. If we could get medical marijuana dispensaries reclassified, we could open the doors of SOW and help our community with something it badly needs. So, thank you.
The other thing I forgot to add is that as far as an adult use is concerned, I mean, there's absolutely no consumption of any product on the premises. And again, you have to have a card to be able to get in, and you can be underage as far as what we consider as an adult. But I think I just failed to mention that you cannot consume anything on the premises, so appreciate it.
Council, did you have any questions? Rick?
Thank you for your presentation. Do you know if there's any medical marijuana facilities in Medford or Southern Oregon?
This would be the only one in the state that is from the Oregon Health Authority.
Do you know why?
Well, I think people took advantage of the opportunity to go ahead and open the market more broadly to make money, okay? So this is not always about making money in that direction, but at the same time serving the community and the people that actually need the product.
Valerie, did you still have a question?
Actually, that was my question. I thought I heard them say that there was no other medical marijuana licensed operations in the state of Oregon. And just like Rick, I was wondering why that was. If indeed there is a need for it, why nowhere else in the state has made that effort?
They mentioned the gentleman that we dealt with that wrote that letter was curious as to why we wanted to do this from that standpoint, because everybody had gone rec. And he said that one of the, or two of the facilities have just gone out of business, you know, so because you actually have to have a card, it costs money to get a card. And at the same time, maybe it's limited as far as the overall, you know, venue is concerned. As far as finance, I don't believe we will have that problem. And at the same time, I think we're probably going to have another venue that will facilitate an opportunity at this location as well.
Are there other questions? All right, thank you.
I would just appreciate your consideration for, you know, this singular opportunity for this use.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing, so we will open it up to the public. If anybody would like to speak on this issue, please step forward to the mic, and there's a 3-minute timer. When the yellow light goes off, you have 30 seconds remaining. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this issue? Please step forward and state your name and whether or not you live in the city.
Brandon Davis, address in Josephine, or Grants Pass, Oregon. That's just a interesting, concept. There's all these recreational dispensaries. You see some of our senior members coming there for like lotion, salves, edibles. Many of them are going for the medicinal properties, not the high. I like what you said. You're going about it for offering it to those who need help, who want more of the medicine part of it. I can support that. That's amazing, actually. That's all.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue? Step forward and state your name and whether or not you live in the city.
Right. Julia Hendricks, City of Grants Pass. I noticed he commented that there were medical marijuana stores in the state of Oregon, but did not succeed. The stores closed. I would caution the council, if you're changing an ordinance that can have a bigger impact on our community, that you might be changing something for a business that may or may not succeed 6 months from now, a year from now, because there's not enough clientele to support that business. If people aren't paying the fees for their marijuana cards because they're getting it at the Diamond Cannabis store, I don't know how you can, you would be changing a law that for a business that may or may not succeed in this town. And there's probably a reason why there's none of them in our state, because we have legalized marijuana in our state.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to council for discussion. Valerie.
Well, I find it interesting that there was no letters sent out, that it was only done through the other form, because I can guarantee you, had letters gone out, we probably would have more people here concerned. And I say that because when we brought up this before with the library being, I know the library is within a distance, as is, if I'm not mistaken, the recreational area soccer field down in the city, that it was very controversial. I personally am not in favor of it, for most of the reasons that I will say that the Urban Area Planning Commission stated that I don't think that it is in the best interest of our community at this point. I don't believe in a drive-through. I don't believe there are many drive-throughs. That to me seems kind of crazy, so I'm not in favor of it.
DJ, then Vanessa.
Sure. I'm inclined to agree with the UAPC about adjusting the buffers. We went through an exercise of adjusting adult use buffers and the terms of that, and I think that we're generally satisfied with the adult use and how that's said. I do find the adjustment for medical marijuana to be a compelling argument. It's unfortunate that the UAPC wasn't able to deliberate on that. I'd be open to what everybody else thinks about a change for the medical use. It's not really our job to speculate really on the success or failure of a business. I think that we need to just take this information objectively and find the facts here and whether or not a medical marijuana facility should be considered an adult use. And I just wanted to say to the applicant, I did receive your email, but we need to be very cautious about ex parte contact for these kind of things. But that's why you didn't at least receive a response from me, sir.
Vanessa.
I would just second that. I don't agree with an adjustment of the buffers for adult use, but I would like the council to consider amending the medical marijuana classification. I don't think we should discriminate against patients' care that they choose to receive or that their doctor prescribes them. If we allow folks to pick up opiates at Walgreens, I don't see any difference in picking up their medical marijuana in a drive-through.
Anyone else? Brian?
So is one of our options tonight to send this back to UAPC to ask them this question? I would move that we do so.
All right, is there a second? Vanessa? All right, is that a question or a
I
second?
do have a question, yeah. Is it that the UAPC can't speculate on the municipal code, but they can the development code, correct? And this is a municipal code decision?
Well, you have both before you, but no, the UAPC didn't talk about it because the applicant didn't include that in the application originally. The medical piece only came after the Planning Commission held their hearing and made their recommendation. I mean, the applicant could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that kind of got their thinking stimulated, and they thought, oh, well, maybe there's another way to do this. And so, you know, there's nothing to say that somebody couldn't submit a supplement, you know, to the council between the Planning Commission and the council hearing. Now, if it's a substantial change, you probably should send it back. I think that may be worthy of some discussion about whether you consider that to be a substantial amendment, and whether or not the council, or whether or not you think that the Planning Commission is going to offer, you know, anything new that you don't already have. But that's really the reason why they didn't talk about it, because the applicant changed it based on the recommendation of denial from the Planning Commission.
I understand, thank you.
Brian, you made a motion to remand to the UAPC.
Correct.
Was there a second?
I just have a question whether...
Was there a second on the motion?
No.
Vanessa? Okay, Valerie?
My question is because it is two different things. One of them is the buffer, one of them is the medical marijuana, and we have what the UAPC stated on the buffers. That was clear that they denied it for their reasons there. So it would be, my best bet would be to deny the buffer part of it and then send the medical marijuana to them, because otherwise they're going to look, well, didn't we already go through this? Why are they sending it back to us? They've been there before. So
Well, we would be sending it back to them to consider the medical marijuana adjustment.
but that's what I'm saying. So if we agree, can we separate it out and do that, and we deny the buffer, which they've already gone through, then they would only need to look at the medical marijuana part, is what I'm saying. Is to me, I keep hating to send things back to the UAPC that they've already done, because they have plenty on their plate. So if indeed that part of it was, if we don't agree if we agree that the buffers are not right, then we could just send the medical marijuana back to them. It would be my recommendation.
So one of the routes that you can take is, yes, you can deny the buffer zone, but the marijuana, whether it's medical marijuana or not, it's still going to have a buffer zone question, because you're really talking about whether, really what I'm hearing is that there's a appetite to have a discussion about whether medical marijuana should be considered an adult business, right? So if we're talking about the buffers are based on, what you have in front of you is based on a subjective standard that the UAPC has brought before you and said, for these reasons, it does not meet this objective standard. That won't stop the applicant from trying again in order to have basically the definition of medical marijuana parsed out from just marijuana business. As Brad said, marijuana business in the code is all-encompassing. It encompasses all, it seems to be that the intent was to encompass all marijuana businesses.
So if we were to redefine marijuana businesses and separate out the two, would it need to go back to UAPC to consider the Article 4 amendment?
Well, the planning
14.
commission under our code isn't authorized really to make any municipal code recommendations to you, so.
Right.
But the thing is that the development code, any change to the development code does require the planning commission to make a recommendation, so the definition is in both. So if you're going the route of potentially changing the definition and sparsing out medical from recreational, then you are still impacting the development code. So
But it's-
both would be.
Sounds to me like first we would need to have a council decision that the council would like to separate out the definitions of the medical versus recreational marijuana businesses pertaining to the municipal code. And then it would go to UAPC to consider the development code?
Well, I mean, the definition of medical marijuana is always going to be at the discretion of council, right? That's going to be something that council decides on its own for the municipal code. It will affect the development code because, I mean, it's something that's already in there. But I think that it's important to note that the definition of medical marijuana and the buffers are, that when you really break it down, they're two separate issues. They're two completely separate issues. So a denial tonight wouldn't stop council from revisiting, parsing out the difference between recreational marijuana or medical marijuana on its own.
This isn't providing any clarity in the process, I'm afraid. What is your recommended order of operations?
To accept the UAPC's decision
To make a decision on this particular issue tonight and
Yes.
then consider
And then-
separately if we were so inclined?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Brian?
I would move to withdraw my motion.
All right. Accepted. Further discussion? Did you have a question, Kurt?
Well, yeah, I think Chloe makes an excellent case for why medical marijuana dispensary should be considered a separate category. And from the presentation, there was a 500-foot buffer for medical, correct?
Well, there was a 500-foot buffer mentioned, but the state code, that's just part of a provision that you could get to. Yeah.
Well, okay, so that would be something we'd have to establish. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
So if we established a 500-foot buffer, would they be in compliance or would they be out of compliance at that location?
If you keep the current uses that are in our current codes, parks, daycares, schools, etc., then I believe it's going to be out of compliance at 500.
So we'd still have to consider a
A
variance?
different, yeah.
Okay, well, I would be all for separating the two. Thank you.
Joel?
Well, I was going to make a motion unless there's more discussion.
Valerie?
I think my only discussion is I still believe that with the library there, and that I would prefer not to allow it, because I think the library is what makes it within the, not go there. And I would be more interested in knowing how many medical marijuana places there are left in the state of Oregon, because I think there are very few. I think once they, yeah, so there are 0. And I'm not cutting edge. I'll just tell you tonight, I'm not cutting edge. I do not want to go out on a limb and go there, so I'm just ready to deny myself.
Rick?
I also agree with Valerie, and I'm concerned with the buffers. And we've already seen the impact for other situations we're having in our parks, and I don't want to put any more opportunity for people feeling that they can't use our parks, and library, and schools. So I would not be in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
DJ?
So right now, as we sit, we have the buffer issue and then the proposed amendments after UAPC, and those issues are currently conflated. So theoretically, if we were to accept the recommendation from UAPC and put this to bed, and then we were to readdress whether or not we wanted to redefine medical marijuana dispensaries, is that then standing alone, not conflated with the other buffer issue, is that then a topic for UAPC's consideration alone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
So if we were to deny this on the grounds that the UAPC, the three criteria that they found insufficient, we would essentially be done with it, would we not? And then Mr. Hayes could reapply, could he not? He could reapply on the medical issue, and that would essentially officially reintroduce it to the Urban Area Planning Commission. It would then automatically come before us a second time, if only after basically he's reapplied with those criteria. So
That's correct.
So we could deny it, and then the ball would be in Mr. Hayes' court whether or not he wants to go forward on the other issue, the medical issue.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Joel?
So I'm ready to make my motion. So I make a motion to uphold the UAPC recommendation to deny the application.
Is there a second? Valerie? Discussion on that motion? Vanessa?
It does sound like there's some general interest from the council on revisiting the revision of the medical marijuana definition, and we had to have interest in pushing that over to the UAPC, so if you guys are still interested in reapplying, I would encourage that.
All right, so the motion was to uphold the UAPC's denial, so you need to vote yes if you would like to deny this request. And Joel, you made the motion. How do you vote?
That can be confusing. I'll vote yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie? Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0. Any further discussion on that topic? Okay. Next up, we will consider council action item A, which is an ordinance that would amend the Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 4.18.010, and add in Chapter 4.19. And who is our, oh, this is just a second reading of it because it was not unanimous. So we don't have a presentation. Is there any, does anybody have any questions on this topic? All right, Brian?
Yeah, I move to adopt the ordinance amending Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 4.18.010, purpose and intent, exclusions, and adding Chapter 4.19, small wireless facilities, to be read by title only, second reading.
All right, second from Kurt. Any discussion on that? All right, Brian, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
DJ?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-2. Second reading, please, Karen.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass, amending Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 4.18.010, purpose and intent, exclusions, and adding Chapter 4.19, small wireless facilities.
Thank you. All right, item number B is a resolution that calls for a measure to be placed on the November ballot regarding council stipends. And are we doing a presentation? All right, Augustus is coming up. I think you all have a handout there on your dais.
Yes. All right, good evening, Mayor Council. So this is our conversation about a potential council stipend for the November general election. So what you're going to have under consideration tonight are, one, the resolution approving the explanatory statement for the ballot measure and the title, and the resolution approving the charter referral. So you'll also see Exhibit A, the ballot title, caption, question, and summary, and Exhibit B, which is the charter markup and clean version. So the proposed changes to the charter include providing mayor and council with compensation for their duties and the amount to be chosen by council beginning in January of 2025. So I placed $500 in there as a placeholder just because it felt kind of weird to put 3 X's with a dollar sign next to it. So after hearing the discussion with council and the ranges that we heard from 300 to 600, I figured 500 would be a safe placeholder for the moment. In addition to this $500 stipend per month, it would allow for a yearly cost of living adjustment tied to the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, which is CPIU, not to exceed 3% annually. So the current language in the charter states that mayor and council members shall receive no pay for their services, and compensation of each other city officer and each employee shall be provided for by the council. The proposed language in the charter is the mayor and council members shall receive whatever amount you choose, monthly compensation for their services beginning in 2025. Cost of living adjustments shall be tied to the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, CPIU, not to exceed 3% annually. The compensation of each other city officer and each employee shall be provided for by the council. And again, the amount is at council's discretion. So what's left to be decided is the amount of pay. And like we said, we had the discussions in previous workshops ranging from 300 to 600 monthly. And as a reminder, the last day for the city to file referral text or prepare ballot titles in order to complete challenge period by deadline is Friday, August 19th of 2022. So the call to action date is tonight. And it's really at your discretion whether you want to approve the resolution, approve it with modifications, or do not approve the resolutions at this time. If you don't approve the resolutions, it won't go on the ballot. With that, I turn it over to council.
Thank you, Augustus. Are there any questions? No? All right, this is open for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment and turn it over to council for discussion. Rob.
For many of the reasons that I've stated at prior meetings, I think it's very important that we use any tools at our disposal to try to increase the depth of the pool of the candidates who may want to consider running for city council. Right now, it's very, very difficult for a working parent who might need to deal with childcare when they're coming to have to go to a meeting, or someone who may have to miss work and forfeit pay because of that to come to a meeting. So right now, for younger working people, they'd have to actually go out of pocket potentially to even consider being on the city council. And I just think that's a bad direction, because we've had, in our past council election, 3 out of the 5 positions where the candidates ran unopposed. And if we continue down that road, we're going to end up with potentially empty seats or councilors that are just very, very, very underqualified. Fortunately, I don't believe that's happened yet as far as being extraordinarily underqualified, but I would hope that when I look back at 2008 election that I was involved with city council, there were so many excellent candidates in just about every position, multiple choices, and that just isn't happening. And I don't see it happening unless we try to do something to attract more people to run. So I think that a stipend is probably the way to do that. As we've pointed out before, the stipend would not start until January of 2025, so the public would have the ability to replace anyone who's currently on the council that they're not satisfied with. The public would also have the right to run themselves if they feel that they would like to take a stab at it and want to contribute in that way. So, you know, I guess you could say at a minimum, we're doing about 15 hours of meetings per month. I'd like to add to that also to remind everyone that we also do 20 hours in 1 week of the strategic planning. That was 2.5 days, and also the budget committee. So the 15 hours of meetings a month that we do, I think we need to also, basically on a yearly average, it's about 2 hours more per month than that. With that in mind, I'd like to propose that we, I think that 500 is a little bit higher than I'm comfortable putting on the ballot. I would be willing to go with 400. I know that's a little bit higher than some of the councilors have said they're comfortable with, but I would like to, I'm actually going to, well, for now, I'll stop talking and then we'll make a motion later. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolutions approving the explanatory statement and charter referral for placement with the edit of $400 a month for council pay rather than $500.
Brian with the second? All right.
So my mistake on this presentation, so I just realized that for council action, there's B and C, one of which is for the ballot, and then the second one, C, is for the explanatory statement. So the motion would actually just be to approve the charter referral for placement on the November ballot with the modification.
I think that's what he said, isn't it? Did you just read from the?
Without the explanatory statement, because I haven't shown you that yet.
Okay, so I'll adjust my motion to mirror what Augustus just said.
All right, so the motion just at this point is to place the measure on the ballot with the amount of $400. Okay. Discussion on that, Valerie?
Yeah, I will say this is not an easy job. It's not. There is a tremendous amount of reading and research and follow-up to whatever. And I originally was going to go with 300, but I would agree with the 400 because if you're really going to get quality people in this day and age, I think you really need to offer them the opportunity to have some stipend if that helps them with childcare, with whatever it is. I think it is just a difficult time to be in this business, and I think having something there would encourage more people to run. So I am in favor of putting it on the ballot.
Further discussion? Joel?
Well, I'm in favor of putting it on the ballot also, and for the voters to vote on. I think it's important that the voters weigh in on this, and not that it's a big deal either way. But it's a good way to decide it one way or the other. So I'm going to vote for it to put it on the ballot.
Vanessa?
I also do support the spirit and the intention of today's discussion. I don't think the $400 amount goes far enough. I think that the city of Grants Pass has been historically unrepresented by its city council. I would argue to say that the amount of renters have been substantially low. The amount of younger people and women running for city council have also been historically low. We have historically been represented by folks who have more resources than a majority of the population. And it is much harder for those, for the average individual of the community to come forward and make themselves as available as this position requires you to be. Councilor Pell did and has mentioned that, we spend an average of 15 hours a month attending meetings, and there's weeks where that's the amount of time that I spend in 1 week, depending on the subject matter that we have before us. I would like to see a more engaged city council, and I'm not speaking badly about anybody here today, just for the future of our community. I would even like to see city council lobby the state government for issues that are out of our hands. take the time to fully understand state laws that come down that we're required to abide by. And those things take time, and a full-time worker working 40, 50, 60 hours a week to make ends meet in one of the most expensive places to live in the whole state of Oregon, it's just not possible. So I do support the spirit of this discussion, but I don't think $400 goes enough. I originally advocated for $1,000 very early on. The intention of that is thinking that somebody could hold a part-time job and the stipend would actually allow them to work at this type of role in a part-time fashion. I since have lowered that suggestion down to $600, which I think is more fair when you consider daycare cost, the average student loan that folks have under the age of 45, housing costs, average utilities, you name it. So I do support this, but I will be voting no on the $400.
Further discussion? DJ?
Yeah, I think the spirit of this is appropriate. However, I don't think the timing is right. I'm hopefully anticipating finding sources of funding for public safety, which I'm thinking is the most important thing that the council should be talking about. And I think that proposing both an ask for permanent funding for public safety and an ask for stipend for council at this time is going to weaken both efforts. I don't have faith in asking both of those things on the ballot. Sunsetting date of 2025, if we're really talking about that, then I don't feel a sense of urgency for this. I'm not in favor of it.
Rob?
I understand the points that Vanessa and DJ made. To me, the sense of urgency for a call to action on this, or for an implementation date of 2025, is right now, because it would give the public the opportunity to replace anyone who's currently on the council. It's 2 general election cycles. So anyone that's coming up for election this time that the public doesn't like and doesn't feel deserves pay in 2025, they can vote them out. Or if they want to run for office this time thinking that there may be pay in 2025, again, they can do that. So to me, to put this off further takes away some of the tools and the leverage the public would have to shape the council and to see who gets paid. So I would actually say that this is actually the perfect time to give the public the opportunity to shape the council and be satisfied with their choices before the pay would be implemented.
Rick?
I also feel if we're trying to attract more people to be on the city council, minimum amount would be $500 and probably $600. So I think the proposal has a lot of merit to it, but I think if the purpose is attracting new people, the amount needs to be larger. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? All right, the motion was to move this forward with the amount of $400. And Rob, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
DJ?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes?
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
No.
Vanessa?
No.
Valerie?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3. And that brings us to the second part. Did you have more to say, Augustus?
Yes, so this is for the the resolution for the explanatory statement. So the explanatory statement is found on page 197 of your packet, and it reads as such. The proposed measure makes adjustments to the city charter. City charter defines roles and authority for the governance of the city. The proposed amendments to the charter include 1, providing mayor and council compensation for their duties in the amount of $500, now $400 monthly beginning January 2025, allowing for yearly cost of living adjustments tied to the consumer price index for all urban consumers, not to exceed 3% annually. A yes vote would favor making the amendments. A no vote would be against making the amendments. That's the explanatory statement. Call to action is to approve the resolution approving it.
Are there any questions? No questions for Augustus? All right. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to comment on this portion of the discussion? All right, turn it over to council. Valerie.
I move to adopt the resolution approving the explanatory statement with the amount of $400.
Is there a second? Rob? Discussion on the motion? All right. Valerie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
BJ?
Nope.
Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
And that brings us around 6-2. All right. Thank you, Augustus. All right, that brings us to item D. A resolution approving a time extension for the grant award to Erickson Dental Care. Brad is on his way up. And I'm going to real quickly pass out some items that have to do with public comment, just so you guys will have those.
Are we ready? All right. So the request before you tonight is a follow-up to a grant that you approved, I guess a little bit over 18 months ago. This is for Erickson Dental, and the keyboard's not working. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not. Okay. Well, at least we have a couple of nice pictures to freeze on. So I guess you have in front of you, fortunately, this is a fairly short presentation. So slide 2, it talks about the subject and summary. This would authorize a 3-month time extension to the Business Retention and Relocation Grant for $50,000, up to $50,000, and this is on Northeast 7th Street. Slide 3 just kind of shows you where it's at in relationship to some of the other businesses there. So most of you were on the council when the original grant was approved. This is a BRAG program, and the request at that time was to expand the facility by about 908 square feet, allow for 2 more dental chairs and a handicapped restroom to better serve their patients. Some of the improvements included stormwater, parking lot, and sewer upgrades. The code also required a pedestrian connection between the dental facility and 7th Street to connect the sidewalk on 7th Street more directly to the dental facility. So this was approved in December of 2020. The total amount for these can't exceed 50% of the total qualifying cost. The total is well over $800,000, so the maximum of $50,000 for a grant like this would certainly be met. Most of the work was completed in the one-year time period that the grant required. And we did want to underscore that Erickson has been working with community development regularly on the project. They did run into some delays with construction and labor and things like that. So they didn't get their certificate of occupancy on that 900 square foot expansion until just last month. Well, June, I guess that's 2 months ago now. But no payments on the grant have been issued and technically can't because it has expired. So the request would be for 3 months to allow time to get the paperwork in and work with community development to get the receipts and things like that submitted, and then the grant could be reimbursed. So there are funds available under that LB 6394, which in the budget is the designated BRAC money, and we have some carryover from when this was originally approved. So you've got the three options down there at the bottom to approve, modify, or deny.
Are there any questions for Brad? No? Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? All right, I'll turn it over to council for discussion. Rick?
If there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
That works.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution amending resolution number 20-6997, awarding Erickson Dental Care LLC a business retention and relocation assistance matching grant up to $50,000 for infrastructure and SDC charges. The approval includes a 3-month extension to the date of adoption of this resolution.
Thank you. Second from Vanessa. Any discussion on that motion? All right. The motion was to approve the extension. And Rick, how do you vote?
Yes?
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. All right. Next up, we have a resolution that would consent to Josephine County's application of ordinance number 22005, amending the county code by adding chapter 5.50 and imposing a seasonal sales tax on retail activities within the Grants Pass city limits.
All right, hello again, council. So we're going to talk about consent to the county sales tax measures. It's a very short presentation, but there is going to be a lot of information, and some of it might be confusing, so please ask questions if you have them. So why am I bringing this consent resolution to you? As of right now, council's expressed interest in placing a potential underlevy for city voters in the county's law enforcement retail activities tax if it raised sufficient funds for law enforcement. Council did not want to place a percentage or an amount of an underlevy in the text language. We wanted to keep it open, so we're making sure that we're meeting all of our obligations for law enforcement funding. And so what council instructed staff to do was to draft specific language about how we would go about a potential underlevy based on the tax revenue. So when I was exploring writing this language and getting it into the ordinance, it was brought to my attention that as a home rule city with a charter and working with Josephine County, who's a home rule county with a charter, Josephine County cannot impose how the city handles its own levy. And so in putting that language in, the city wouldn't be able to have a lot of control over how that language looked. And the way that we get around that is by consenting to the county's ordinance. So the reason, whether or not you consent to the ordinance really speaks to whether or not you want the language for the underlevy in the final ordinance. If you choose not to consent and the county passes the tax and the voters vote for it, the city will still be subject to the tax because under the Oregon Constitution, the tax is going to be applicable to everybody who's within the jurisdiction of the authorizing body, which would be the county. And so Josephine County wouldn't ordinarily need to seek consent for a tax measure because it's not a police power. Police power is the inherent power of government to regulate the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. So it's a regulatory power. Think of something like eminent domain. So essentially, without consent, the county is not able to dictate how we underlevy if we were to choose to do so. And so that's why we're looking at this consent issue. Now, the effective consent will be, it'll enable the city to draft a provision for an underlevy that we choose. And so, right as of now, council is instructed that language be added to the ordinance that states that the city will underlevy an amount equal to or greater than the revenue generated by the law enforcement retail activities tax. Council may also choose to make this policy announcement on its own without placing this on the specific language into the ordinance. So the first reading of the LERAT is what I'm going to call it, was Wednesday, January 27th, and the second reading is scheduled for August 10th. The last day for the governing body to file referral text is August 19th, and August 10th is our deadline for placing the actual language into the ballot in time for the county's second reading, and we're going to be discussing the language at next Monday's workshop. Now, after I had completed this presentation and sent it out to you, I received information from the county about their methodology used to come to the $18 million estimate. And in seeking this information, I emailed and asked specifically for the methodology, the numbers, any charts, any sort of communication, or any other information that lent credence to how the county arrived at that $18 million figure. I did not receive anything back. The only information that I received was that the county used census data from 2017 that captured all the retail activity in Josephine County. However, it does not account for certain retail activities that wouldn't be subject to the tax. So this has a direct impact on what the language would look like, because based on my observation, with the information that I received from the county, there are no concrete numbers that support the $18 million estimate strongly. It's very much what I would call a pencil on napkin estimate. So I felt this important for council to know tonight. This was the soonest that I could broach the topic with you, and that's why it's not in my presentation. But I wanted to make sure that you had an understanding that this information was sought at your request, and it was not obtained in the manner that we would have expected to be obtained for a measure like this. So accordingly, my call to action is going to be at council's discretion, and the call to action to approve the consent resolution will also be at council's discretion. With that, I turn it over to Mayor Council.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Rick?
Augustus, thank you for the presentation. When the voters pamphlet comes out, there's different pages in there, endorsement, in opposition, and so forth. Would it be prudent to look at a page of endorsement with the council indicating they would make a dollar adjustment if it were successful? Is that because then that keeps it separate from the ordinance?
Well, yeah, I probably wouldn't have you put it in the voters pamphlet, just because that's something that council could do on its own as a policy measure. So if at some point, say for example, the tax does pass, and the city is realizing revenue that helps it meet its law enforcement obligations, at that point, council can make the declaration that they're going to reduce the property tax levy, and then the discussion about the number figure or the amount by which you're going to reduce the levy can still be had. That is something that council can do at that time. Council can make a preemptive statement or resolve, if they wanted to, by resolution or by order, that council is going to reduce the levy, period, or attach an amount to it. It's not really advised to attach an amount to it, though, just because it's unclear what the revenue generation is going to be.
Thank you.
Other questions? Joel?
I just had two questions, Augustus. First one, you know, as an economist with the federal government, the state of Oregon put out pretty good statistics that we got on a monthly basis for different segments of the economy, and they were by county. And I think there was like 120 different sectors that were in the report. And then my responsibility at the time was to have an in-plan model that would model based upon that input of what actually happened in the county projections for the future. And I assume that's still available. We probably don't know at this point in time. I haven't looked at it.
So if you're talking about the census, the economic census data, that's released every 5 years.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the census data. This is by the State of Economic Development, I think, for the state of Oregon, and it's issued monthly.
I'm unaware. I'll let JC answer that.
Okay.
We didn't look into that information. I'm not aware actually of that.
Okay. Well, I'll do that for us, and because that guy used it for 5 years to make future projections, and it was pretty accurate. The other thing is, I was wondering, the modifications would be in kind with the income generated, and commensurate with the income generated. And so the amount wouldn't be specified, but it would be in kind. And so if all the levy could be replaced by the sales tax, it would be. And if it was less, then it would be less. It seems to me like there's some, what I call, in planning and in fiscal operations, clauses or provisions that we can put in there that would clarify our intent. That would be plain for everybody to see and not dependent upon action afterwards.
So yes, that's correct. And I think that was where council was wanting to go with putting that language into the ordinance, which is the purpose of this consent. And yes, there are ways that we can draft the language where it doesn't pigeonhole this council essentially into giving a commitment to reduce the levy by a certain amount, right? It's going to be strictly dependent on whatever revenue you're going to receive from this tax measure. The thing that I wanted to impose upon council is that the numbers, the $18 million is, I frankly, I'm not an economist. I don't look at I'm not a tax modeler. I don't do any of these things. What I'm giving you are the facts that I received. And the facts that I received were that the $18 million figure was based on, I'm not really sure. It's really, I'm not trying to be coy. I'm not trying to be smart. I'm truly not sure. And the discussions that I've had are, it can be a large range. It could be on the upper end of that $18 million range, of which the city would get about $8 million. It could be substantially less. And also, I'd like to impress upon council that the 2017 economic data that was used is about 5 years old. 2022 economic data is going to come, economic census data is going to come out this year. And the 2017 numbers didn't take into account a 2-year pandemic, global pandemic. So we're operating on an assumption right now that the sales tax is going to bring in more than it may. And so I'm up here trying to convey to you, I don't know how much it's going to convey. I don't think the finance director knows. It's going to be it's a very wide range.
Just to keep us on topic here with the first question at hand is really to consider this resolution, which would allow the sales tax to be imposed, collected within city limits. Is that right? Regardless of how much money is collected or?
So, yes and no. Really what we're using the consent measure to do is to draft our own language about how the city is going to handle its levy based on the revenue received from the tax. Whether or not the city consents to this tax measure or not doesn't change the fact that the tax, if passed, will be collected in the city. If the tax is passed and we don't consent to it, we're still subject to the tax by the Oregon Constitution, which states that no tax or duty will be imposed without the consent of the people, okay? And all taxation shall be uniform on the same class of subjects within the territorial limits of the authority imposing the tax. So because we're in Josephine County and Josephine County would be imposing that tax, we would be subject to that tax. The consent is just for us to be able to draft language of our own that talks about how the city would handle a potential underlevy based on the projected revenue from the sales tax.
That's clear.
Brian?
And so if we consent and we craft that language, does that go into the voter's pamphlet, into the explanatory statement?
So the explanatory statement at this point in time will say that the city is going to propose an underlevy, period. It doesn't say by how much or by how. What we're going to have to put that in the explanatory statement anyway. This is dealing with the language in the actual ordinance that's going to be passed.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Cool.
All right, is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? If you do, please step forward and state your name and whether or not you live in the city.
My name is Don Hendricks. I do live in the city. This thing is really confusing. And we in the public, we don't have clarification. You guys don't have clarification. I own 2 properties downtown, both of which are retail locations. One of the operations we've been running for 25 years. We've lived in downtown area for 25 years. Ms. Lovelace said a few minutes ago that the job you guys hold up there is hard. Try retail. Retail has gotten insanely more difficult in the last 10 years, 5 years. Had the pandemic, all hell broke loose. Issues that come to mind regarding the sales tax is small businesses in all communities, but downtown, Grants Pass, we're struggling just to keep things going. We're struggling to get customers. We're struggling to get supplies. Our prices have gone up substantially. Items we buy from the manufacturers, they're charging more. We are getting lower margins. Throw in the advent of the internet, more and more consumers are going internet direct. What does that do for the downtown brick and mortar? It kills us. So adding on top of this a 3% sales tax, I think is devastating. I can't imagine it's even being considered. I completely understand the levy situation, and we've been trying for years to figure out how to fund our safety, sheriff's department, the whole thing. I know it's a really difficult situation. I think the sales tax is not the solution. The business that we run, Okay, let me back. The time frame that you're talking about, this April through October, for our business, couldn't possibly be the worst time. Now, if you want to pick on people coming into town, vacationing, the money's going to come from them. My business doesn't. My business is local. My business is you people. You people. You come in, you buy your product from us. Add 3% to that and add the work that we have to do is just going to reduce our margins even more. I'm not in favor of it. I would ask you guys not to support this decision. Thank you.
Is there anyone further who wanted to speak? Yep, please tell us your name and whether or not you're in the city.
Yeah, Ted Hendricks. I do live in the city, and I am now the owner of Don's Bike Center. And I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit more. I'd agree that, yeah, this would affect the tax falls in our peak season. All of our business is done in the April through October season. And I would say that for us as a business, very little is done for tourists. There's some service and some accessories, but most of our bike sales and accessory sales are not tourists, it's to locals. I think that competing with online sales has gotten increasingly harder, and it's always a price thing. So for us to be further competitive, we'd have to be discounting below MSRP, which we already sometimes have to do just to compete with Amazon and other retailers. And a lot of our high-end sales do come from out of state. We have people who come from Northern California to avoid sales tax on $5,000 to $10,000 bike purchases, and I fear that if we have a sales tax, they're going to look to other nearby counties that don't have a sales tax. So we then have to lower our prices again to be more competitive with direct competitors in our area. So I think it would bring money not to our county but to others. We also are already taxed by the state on every single bike sale we make. It's a relatively small tax of $15 per bike, but we get pushback on that because it's affecting locals, and they're always concerned that that money is going to go to state and not to locals. So I think any further taxing is just going to get more pushback from customers. So as a business owner, I'm not for increasing taxes on sales.
Anybody else? Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council staff. Of course, I'm here on the other end of this thing because first off, as a county commissioner, and I've been a county commissioner for almost 6 years now, is 8 years sitting where you're sitting, and every time it came around, it was, what are we going to do for law enforcement? So as a county commissioner, I thought, how can we do something holistically for law enforcement all through Josephine County? We're not going to get any help from any of the other counties. We're not going to get any help from the state. I'm not worried about whether you get more or we get more or whatever. That's why it was set up so that it was by population, because it's a fair way to go about it. It's a 3% sales tax, and I don't know if anybody's in the room, and I was in business for a long time, and anything that was imposed on me got passed through to my customer. And that's just the way it is. It wasn't me going to take the hit for 3%. I know that times coming out of COVID are really, really bad. I cannot imagine what our situation is going to be if we don't adequately fund law enforcement once and for all, to where we can recruit, whether it's sheriff's deputies, whether it's city policemen, whether it's code enforcement. If we cannot recruit and we can't retain, we aren't going to do it levy to levy, day to day, year to year, month to month. People want to make long-term commitments when they move here with their family and their businesses. If this, and what we're asking, and I agree with Augustus 100%, I don't know what it's going to be. The $18 million came from an economist up in the Salem area at the request from Commissioner Beartrigger. The guy's name is Chris something. I saw all the back and forth between Wally and Herman and this person. It was pretty compelling. Now, is it going to be, does he have a crystal ball? No. If I had a crystal ball, you know where I'd be? In the island somewhere, on my own island, because I earned all that money in Las Vegas, knowing what the cards were going to look like. I can't tell you that. We're using $18 million as it's up here. Now, how do we split? Everybody, how are you going to split that? I could say it's $5 million. I could say it's $20 million, and we don't know if it could be $22 million. You talk about internet sales, we did call the internet people, and they said, just give us your zip code, give us your ordinance, give us your results, and guess what? We do this every day for every jurisdiction, 47 states except for Oregon. And they do a lot of things in Oregon because there are a lot of sales taxes in Oregon that it's already taken care of. When I buy car parts, and I buy a lot of car parts, as soon as they get to my zip code, they say, oh, you don't have sales tax. But if we did have a sales tax, it would come up, it'd pop up on their screen, and they'd automatically calculate it and write a check. So I see your reservation, but coming from my heart, all I want to do is try to fund a long-range solution to law enforcement. Whether it catches the whole thing, I don't know if it's going to catch the whole thing. I'm not going to promise that. But if you don't want to come along, you're on your own, and I'm just trying to get it figured out for the county. Not just for us, but for everyone.
Please come forward and state your name.
Julia Hendricks, Grants Pass City resident, and I appreciate what Mr. DeYoung said about the other 47 states that charge sales tax. But we're not talking about a state sales tax, we're only talking about a county sales tax. And I think that as a citizen of Grants Pass, we've always supported our local levies that are on our property tax bill. I see it every year in support of that for our schools and for our police officers. They've never been not voted upon, never been approved by the citizens of Grants Pass. The county has some other issues, but the city of Grants Pass, the citizens of Grants Pass are always in favor of supporting that, and it's never been an issue. And I think that even if you had to raise that levy in the city of Grants Pass, we'd probably support it because we like our police department and we like that. Now, if you're going to start telling me that I'm going to have to start paying 3% on all my goods and services, or at least the goods I buy around here, and then you're thinking about even maybe decreasing my levy, but keeping a levy, now I'm like feeling double taxed because I'm still going to have a levy. It might go down, but I'm also going to be paying for my police department in my sales. And, we all go shopping in Medford, so I'm going to have the opportunity to think twice. If I'm already paying these taxes on my properties that I own, am I going to shop locally and pay another 3% to support the same thing I'm already supporting my property taxes? You have to really think about what you're doing to the citizens of Grants Pass with the levies and the taxes.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue?
Just as another point, just wanted to let council and mayor know that the city staff did check in with Amazon, and that is correct, that they will work for a local jurisdiction as far as applying with the addresses that apply to within the county, if that were to be imposed.
Thank you. All right, we'll close public comment and turn it over to council for discussion. Valerie.
Well, I am going to contest the people voting for the local levy simply because I was the person who went out and tried to get $1.89 and increase it by 10 cents in this last levy, and it did not pass. So having gone out numerous times and knowing the amount of time and energy it takes to go out for a levy every 3 to 5 years, and lately we've been doing it for 3 years because we're just eking by, and every year we have so many police officers and fire people saying, you know something, my job is on the line, and they don't want to stay here anymore. And so it has made recruiting very difficult in Southern Oregon, in Grants Pass, in the county. And that, to me, is enough for me to start saying we have to look for other diversification of public safety funding. Our tax right now, property tax, was built on Measure 5 clear back in 1996. And we were the lowest, us and I think Curry County are the lowest. 53 cents per thousand was what the permanent for the county. Ours is $4.13. We cannot touch that. We cannot increase that. At that time, they realized how that couldn't happen. At that time, we had money coming from logging. Well, here we are. How many years later? And that money's not coming. And we've known that for how many years? So the point is we have to diversify. We cannot keep going out and asking. There is no way those people in the county, they pay 53 cents and then we pass the 97, I think it is 97, 98 cents for the levy in the county. We have the $4.12 plus $1.79, which we have had for more than 10 years. You know how hard it is to go out every 3 years and beg? You first of all have to go out and beg for people to give you money to put it on the ballot and to advertise it. I mean, we can't survive how we've been surviving. I mean, there's been a lot of changes, and I haven't seen the legislature take it on task. I will tell you that our property taxes are so much lower than everybody else. That's why people move here. That's why we get all the Californians to move up here. We've got the lowest property tax in the state of Oregon. We live in paradise. Then, of course, they don't want it to go up because that's why they came here. Well, the money has to come from somewhere. A lot of those people who can afford that also go out and get private surveillance or security. That doesn't help the rest of us. And I think everybody has seen in the last 10 years what our police are up against. And it's not gotten any better. And it will be a disaster if we lose our sheriff deputies. I can also tell you that we are eking by. We are losing services all the time in this city because we do not just survive on property taxes. Our public safety, which is fire and police, which is now separating, takes all of our permanent taxes, it takes all of our levy, and it takes another $2 million out of our general fund. We don't have park money. We don't have money for other things because they eat it up. But we understand that is the most important thing in our community is public safety. I will also tell you, we have gone from a logging community. So now what do they tell us that our main focus for incoming money is? Tourism. That's where we are. So maybe not in your business, but there are a lot of businesses around here that do depend upon, and I give credit to Dan for saying, okay, well, if you have something that you're gonna buy that you know you can buy at a different time of year, hold on. Give our businesses that business in the winter months. But while we have the one industry that we're right now most dependent upon, that everybody else, I travel, I don't ever stop and say, oh, I'm not paying that your sales tax. That's ridiculous. I can't tell you how many places I go to, and every place has a sales tax. I think people drive into Oregon and laugh at us because we have nothing that we get from them, because we're so independent. Well, I'm tired of being independent, and my thought is we've got to diversify. We've been sitting on the council for the last 3 months going, gee, maybe we can put it on the water bill. Gee, maybe we could put it there. Well, we don't want to put it on the water bill because we're putting in a 90 million water treatment plant, and I don't really want to put it there. But Jacksonville does, Medford does, every other municipality in the state of Oregon does, but we've chosen not to. So do we want to go after our local citizens, or do we try to want to get something from outside the area? That is why I think this is the time to put it to the public. I am putting myself behind people understanding why our property tax paying for public safety does not work. We need to do something different. And this is the time the county needs us. I'm saying this is a time Cape Junction doesn't have any law enforcement. Do you think how happy they're going to be if they could actually have somebody in their community for law enforcement? I understand how hard it is. I really do. And I agree. A lot of people are going on the internet. But guess what? They're going to get it on the internet too. And so a lot of the money is going to come from people on that internet that are going to have to pay it. So I just think this is the time to have the discussion. It has to go to the ballot. It has to be talked about. I know, that no business is going to like it, but it also doesn't go to state. How about all that marijuana that goes up to the state? The state takes all the money and gives us a little bit here and there. This stays within our county. That state can't do anything with it. It's taken in our county, it's bought to our county, it's dispersed within our county. So that's another advantage, is that this local tax stays here, and there's a $2,000, anything over $2,000 isn't going to be taxed. So there's a $60 limit, basically, on that bicycle that you buy. I'm not going to drive to Medford to get a bicycle for $60. It's going to cost me that much in gas. So I think that this is just an answer to a problem that we've had for a long time. And because our tax system doesn't work, we have to look at it. And pick it apart and find out what will. And I think this is the best suggestion that I've seen that affects all of the county. So I'm going to vote in favor of it, and I personally would like to have, because I think what will make it pass is if people understand that it is just diversifying and changing the tax system. It is not just adding more tax on.
DJ.
Oh my, Val. Just, I really think that you just, you hit it. You really did. All the property taxes, all the levy, 2-point-something million of general funds, that's what funds our public safety. To put it as bluntly as possible, the future for public safety in our town, in our county, and in Cave Junction is bleak. It really is. At the beginning of last year, we underwent a $1.8 million gap funding exercise to try to maintain a current level of service that the constituents expect in this community. We were fortunately able to do that without general public noticing. We have the same amount of troops, we have the same amount of vehicles, we have the same amount of patrols, and we were fortunate in getting away with that. I can say with fair certainty that we will be doing that again if we cannot find a permanent revenue source or an adequate funding source, because I can tell you, as somebody that completely understands the dire circumstances of public safety in our county and our community, that it's not enough. All of the property taxes, the 179 levy, and the general fund allocation is not enough. And if we maintain that status quo, that will have to manifest itself as either another revenue source, whether it's a sales tax, whether it's utility fees, whether it's what other imaginative thing we can come up with, or it's going to be a reduction in the level of service. I can tell you with confidence that the Sheriff's Department is hemorrhaging deputies. Grants Pass Public Safety is hemorrhaging deputies. It's very difficult to recruit. So the idea of reducing the level of service, which will manifest itself as in a loss of officers, will be very difficult to rebound from. I can rest assured that if we do another gap funding exercise, whether it's $1 or $2 or $3 million, the community will then understand the bleak circumstances that we have. We absolutely must find an adequate revenue source for public safety, because we currently experience a level of service of public safety in this community that is not paid for, right? We have a temporary levy and we have $2+ million of general fund allocation, and that is just simply not sustainable. I do like the idea of broadening the revenue source amongst the people in the community, and I, as a voting constituent in this community, understanding the circumstance, would happily vote yes for this sales tax, because it is the most well thought out, clever revenue source for public safety that I've heard in the last 20 years. And I'm open to other suggestions and what have you, but if this doesn't come through, we are going to talk about circumstances that in my opinion are more dire than a 3% sales tax.
Vanessa.
I chose to abstain from the last discussion on the sales tax because I do dissent from the council majority. However, I feel as though I have some very important questions that need to be asked. They will be asked rhetorically because nobody has the answers. The first one is enforcement. If a group of businesses band together and decide not to pay the sales tax, who enforces that? That means that one of our most critical services is not receiving the funding that it needs by just outright opposition. What is the contingency if in 2027 there is a global pandemic and consumer spending plummets, or if there is a national or global recession? What is the contingency for funding police services in the event consumer spending plummets? City Attorney today went over one of my main concerns is that none of these revenues are verified. I think it is very concerning to base one of our most critical services for the city, police services, on a game of telephone, which is what Commissioner DeYoung outlined today. I think it goes as far as to threaten the legitimacy of the council for future permanent funding endeavors in the event this is unsuccessful. When you juxtapose that to the situation of the All Care Community Foundation grant, this council spent over a year dissecting every sentence of a $1 million grant. Yet we are ready to endorse this proposal in the 11th hour when we don't have assurances that it meets the needs of the current police division. There also is no room for growth. The 3% is locked in. We have no clue if 3% is enough. We don't know if it'll be too much. There's no way to verify that. We have until the 19th of August, so I can't imagine that it will be verified until then. I did try taking the same steps earlier this year in February and March when we originally initiated this conversation. I asked for 4 different scenarios, playing around with the percentage of the sales tax, the months of the year, and I also was met with no information received, and I heard from city staff that it was too cumbersome to verify. I understand the concern that folks have for corporations online being able to initiate the sales tax, and I think that's fantastic that those corporations can fund finance departments and legal teams to make something as easy as a click of a button, but I don't think the same is the situation for our small business community. I have concern that there's been zero consideration or discussion of any technical assistance grants for accounting, for the accounting needs that this tax will create. So I think that before the council places one of our most critical services into the hands of a game of telephone, I would ask that they heavily reconsider moving forward with an endorsement.
Joel.
Well, first off, I'd like to acknowledge Don and Julie, and I forgot your son's name. Okay, and what you said was true, and I certainly don't want to belittle that, because there can be negative impacts, and there are negative impacts to changing how we fund public services. I remember in our local business, the other thing I wanted to say right off the bat, this isn't about whether we're going to vote yes or no. This is about whether we want to put it on the ballot and approve the resolution giving consent to Josephine County. You folks actually decide. Okay, we don't decide up here, and we have some passion, obviously, we have different views, but the people of the community decide, and the people of the county decide. So in that aspect, you know, in terms of giving you that choice and making sure it's an informed choice, and that your voice can be heard, and these voices can be heard, I think that's very important. I just want to share a little bit. So I'm going to be voting yes for the resolution granting consent because I want that vote. Because if we don't go this way, we're going to have to go some other way. Because last time we lost the county services, our business got robbed about 3 times, and we lost about $20,000 worth of computers. Our employees didn't feel safe. If we had a sales tax at 2%, that would be about $10 million worth of merchandise we'd have to sell to make up for that value that we lost to the ex-con who was sleeping on our doorstep. And it really pissed me off. That's not the right word, but as I'm sure it would you, it looked like Batman left town and the Joker was in charge. And I used to go up and every night about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and they were selling heroin on 4th Street and Washington Boulevard. And I pretended like I had a backpack on, and I'd take down their license plates, and then they'd peel out. And my wife thought I was nuts, but I mean, it was ridiculous. So we do need these services. You folks decide. We don't decide. We want to make sure that you got all the information you have. And I hope that your business and my business and other businesses, we're not in business anymore, but I hope that you don't have to experience what we experienced when we didn't have those services. because it was not pretty.
Further discussion? Rob?
Just briefly, I appreciate what everyone said, but I do need to either question or correct one part of what Joel just said. What the council, and I think I may have been one of the first, if not the first counselor that said that I support putting this on the ballot for the people to vote for. But the council went way beyond that, Joel, and you know that. It wasn't simply putting it on the ballot. What was decided, I believe, last workshop, was that the council was going to actively support and campaign for the passage of this. And I, made it clear that when I leave the council chambers that I would not give up my right to free speech on that issue. And so let's not say that the council is just saying that we want to put it on the ballot, because the council, and you were one who said that you would support the passage of this. Okay, so let's not play games with that. That's not my personal position. We also discussed whether or not, if a majority of the council says it, can it be written that the council supports it? And that was also decided, yes, even though there are some councilors that are against it, it would still be written that the council supported it, even though there are councilors who didn't.
And
let's
could I respond to you, Rob?
So let's be clear about that when I'm
Okay.
finished, and I'm close to finished.
Okay.
Beyond that, there's a lot to think about here, and I had one which I think should be a really simple question that I wasn't able to get an answer to, and I don't know exactly, and it doesn't even address the big issue. The big issue is, where is public safety funding going to come from? But if this were to pass, in November this year, and it would start April of next year, we've paid our levy. We'll pay with our property taxes in November. So that's for I believe until the end of June of the next year. I guess the point is, once if this were to pass and the sales tax were to go into effect, we would have already paid our levy. We essentially are going to be taxed twice. We'll be paying our sales tax. We also have already paid the levy. My question is, how does the public get their money back? How do we get reimbursed if we're going to get taxed twice? And if we're not going to be taxed twice, I'd like to hear how that mechanism, how I'm incorrect with that assumption, and how that mechanism would be. And again, it's not the big picture, but how do we convince, or how do we justify taxing people with a sales tax after they've already paid the levy for that year, and how would they get reimbursed? But I'm finished. Thank you.
Joel?
That's a good point, Rob, on the double taxation, because that's certainly not the intent of anybody. So when I look at putting the sales tax on the ballot, I'm going to respect what the citizens say. The reason I endorsed it was because from my particular position, when I looked at it as a business owner, it was different than yours. There's always winners and losers. And I own property, and so I pay property tax. And when I look at, I didn't endorse it at first, as we put it on the ballot, because there was no guarantee of an offset in property tax. But if your property tax is offset, right now, property owners are the only ones paying the safety levy. They're the only ones paying. And if we have a sales tax, I'm still going to come down to your shop and buy a bike. The $60 won't deter, because I like you, and that's, and you got good quality products. But I would actually pay less money to get the same amount of service. We're not talking about spending more money for public service, but when I look at my own interest, I would have a reduction in my property tax that would be less than what I would pay in the sales tax. So there's winners and losers. And I encourage everybody to critically look at that, including business owners, because you pay property tax too. The one thing I think that is probably not as so much with the margin is, do you lose your competitive edge? And you won't lose your competitive edge online because they get taxed as well, just like we talked about. The big thing will be is will people go to other towns? And I don't know that. I don't know what that is. But I trust that you will, and before you vote, you'll vote in your interest, just like I will.
Valerie?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, and obviously I'm passionate about it, and part of that I think is because I have worked so hard on the levies over the last several years, and I know the energy that goes into that, and so I know the frustration that our police officers and fire officers feel when, you know, they're doing everything, because they go out also, so they have to go every 3 years, and they're out there walking the streets and whatever, and asking for their job, and, you know, it's a lot to ask for a public servant to do that. So, and I've been, as a teacher, I can remember when we had the levies for the schools, you know, and, you know, yeah, I left Rogue River and came to Grants Pass. I didn't have to go through that as much. So, you know, that was, you do what you have to do, and I do get that. And I guess, to me, the most important thing is I want to go out for a public discussion, because I think that is a discussion that needs to be had. I do, and I know there's a lot of people riled up right now about, you know, what's going on in our town, so I think a lot of people might be willing to pay attention. Maybe this is the time we can really have a discussion about how we tax and how do we pay for public safety and what do other communities do. You know, we tried in the last several years to put a gas tax on to try to get people from outside of the city to help pay for our roads, and that didn't pass. We went out and asked for a fire district, hoping that we could get the money for a fire district to separate and go that way, and that didn't pass. So it's just kind of like we're saying, well, what can we do? Give us some solutions, because we got to do something. It's only getting worse. So I would really like to see this put on the ballot. And I really think that if it's going to even have a chance on the ballot, that we need to put in the consent that says that, yes, we understand that we need to diversify, and if we take money, whatever money comes in, and we don't know, you're right, we don't know, but what money does come in needs to offset the levy. And so I would like to see that in the ordinance so that people know that it isn't a money grab. We're not out there trying to get more money out of you. All we're trying to do is figure out a better way to support our law enforcement officers. So with that, I would like to approve the resolution granting consent to Josephine County to apply ordinance number 2022-005 within the Grants Pass city limits, subject to voter approval with the consent, effective consent, council, let's see, what does it say? I think it's in here somewhere. City will under levy an amount equal to or greater than the revenue generated by the law enforcement sales tax. Got it?
Second from Kurt. All right, so the motion was to approve the resolution granting consent to Josephine County to apply ordinance 2022-005 within the Grants Pass city limits, with something that the city will under levy.
Yes, under levy an amount equal to or greater than the revenue generated by the law enforcement, I don't know, RAT, what RAT stands for, regional.
Okay, hang on, I think Augustus wants us to separate those.
So it's just to approve the resolution granting consent to Josephine County to apply ordinance number 2022-005 within the Grants Pass city limits.
Okay.
Because what's going to happen is then, if this passes, staff is going to draft language regarding the underlevy, and I don't want you to commit to something where the language may change. We're going to have that discussion on Monday.
Okay, but there will be discussion as to what's going to be in the ordinance. Okay,
That's
fine.
correct.
Then I will amend my motion accordingly.
Okay, so I think your motion is just back to what's in the packet,
Yes,
that you would
exactly.
approve the resolution.
Yes, within the Grants Pass city limits.
Kurt, are you still with the second? Kurt with the second. Okay, so Monday, we're going to have a discussion on the council's intent to reduce.
Yeah, we're going to have a discussion on what the actual language that's going to go into the county's ordinance is going to look like.
Thank you.
Okay, good to know, because I was going to encourage that next. So we'll wait till Monday.
Okay.
Is there discussion on this motion? DJ?
Yeah, I just want to say briefly that, and I've said this again, that I believe that the under-levying the public safety levy is part and parcel to this deal. I wouldn't be supporting a double down tax. I wouldn't be supportive of 179 plus a tax. It's my intention even at this point to, any and all of it will subsidize that tax. This is to spread the breadth of the revenue amongst more people than just property owners. And for the record, I'm a property owner and a business owner, so I'm making that decision accordingly.
Further discussion on the motion? Okay. Valerie, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
All right, motion passes 7-1. And it sounds like on Monday, we will be having a discussion affirming that intent to reduce the levy accordingly with, if this were to pass. And I think, Valerie, did you offer to write a letter of endorsement?
Well, I did, and I had a discussion with Augustus, but that will go in the voters pamphlet. And so I checked with it's not till September that has to be done. So I did volunteer to do that.
So the voters pamphlet, well, I can get that for you, and what it'll look like in the voters pamphlet. Yes.
Yes, because I have done that before, but I knew it didn't have to be done this week, and so that's why.
Yes, that's
I took
correct.
relief. I
So
looked at
yeah, the
research.
county is taking care of all of that.
Yeah.
We'll have input into how it's going to be worded that the city is going to reduce or under levy in that.
I think you're talking about two different things because you're talking about the language of the actual ordinance.
She's
and-
asking about the
she's-
explanatory statement.
No,
Yeah, no,
the council's interested in writing a letter of
Oh,
support.
Yeah,
that-
the letter of support. Yeah, the letter of support is completely on council.
Yes, and then I knew that, but that also, I need to have the explanatory and then know exactly how it's worded before I can address and write a letter of support.
We'll make sure. Yeah, we'll get it to you.
Okay, so we will also address council endorsing that letter of support at a future date. Are there any further questions or comments on this topic? All right. Dig out my agenda here. All right, the next two items that had to do with appointments, we have pulled item A having to do with the Housing Advisory Committee because the committee did not have an opportunity to make a recommendation on those appointments. And then kind of similar regarding the CEDC applicant. The CEDC is interested in interviewing applicants prior to giving their recommendation for the committee, and that's kind of a new process. So I guess we just wanted to make sure that that would be okay with the council before we gave the thumbs up. I'm seeing nods that people are okay with that. Okay, so we'll let them go ahead and do what they need to do before they make a recommendation for their appointment as well. So that brings us to public comment, and public comment is an opportunity for the public to address the city council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item before the council tonight. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not two individuals. At the conclusion of public comment, council will have an opportunity to respond. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. And Karen, do we have, okay, we had somebody who was, who had called in to make a phone comment, and I'll check on them again at the end here. Sounds like they're not on the phone at the moment. How about Robert Marion?
Good evening, Council. My name's Robert Marion. I'm one of your citizens. I live over by Asante Hospital. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about your proposal to purchase the property over on Nebraska and Ramsey for the homeless encampment. And I'm calling that a homeless encampment because of my experience. I'm a retired Los Angeles City Fireman Staff Assistant with 33 years of service in 2 of the Los Angeles community's worst homeless districts, including Fire Station 9, which is known as Wino Nino. It's the Skid Row station. In 2018, it was proposed that that station, out of the 417,000 calls in the city of Los Angeles, handled 33,000 of the calls due to homeless. And the interesting thing is people that have never visited Skid Row of Los Angeles don't know what they're asking for when you start to talk about encampments and setups that bring people in that do not have responsibility to the community they're coming in, do not obey our laws even as proposed, and then they come in and are given the ability to live for a period of time. And the biggest problem we had in that vicinity was drugs. And I've been listening today, just in the proposals that your council has made, of the problems that we're having with law enforcement and all the things that are happening. And now we're proposing to take and put this encampment in a neighborhood that's near a hospital, near a child care center, and near individual family homes that when I saw it go into the city of Los Angeles, the first thing that happened to the people that lived in those homes was bars went up on the windows. And as a fireman, I went to those homes and said, what's happening? Well, you wouldn't believe the night activity when the shelter closes its doors and will not let any more people in. These people peruse and walk the areas of Skid Row looking for where they can get money to facilitate by theft or by other means to progress their drug addiction. And my heart is that I know these people need help, but planning to put it in a community spot where families live, and we're not even talking about being able to have the security and what the cost for this council is looking at in the future. It's going to be phenomenal because we're bringing in people that don't give back to the community. They don't pay any taxes, we do. And we're going to be punished for that. So I want you to think about where you're putting that. I know there's needs for help for these individuals, but we need to think of other locations that don't inhibit or leave us unprotected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Julia Hendricks. Forgot to warn everybody, when that yellow light goes off is 30 seconds.
Okay. I haven't had that experience yet. I just wanted to weigh in and ask for the councilors that voted in favor of the psilocybin mushroom issue to consider rescinding their vote or re-voting on it. I am not in favor of that. I understand the health benefits of psilocybin mushrooms. I have a family member that uses them for medical reasons, but to open up shop, open up grows in our community, I think is a really bad choice for all the obvious reasons. You know, we have a pot industry here, or marijuana industry, whatever you want to call it, that has brought a lot of issues to our community, and it's put a huge burden on the DEA to try and bust all the illegal grows. We know, we hear about it on the news, we read about it in the newspapers. We are the drug center. I mean, you get off the airplane come October, you will smell the stench of the marijuana grows when you get off the airplane. I've experienced it. So we've already got a huge industry, and the problem with the psilocybin thing is it's a very addictive mushroom that they use. So it really should be medically monitored. And I don't know that that measure that was approved by the voters at the state of Oregon was completely laid out, all the complications that it brings upon a community when you have all the aspects of it. I think that you should follow the lead of the Medford city and table it for a couple years and let's see what happens up in Ashland with theirs. You know, I understand that, you know, if you have the cancer or you have some mental health issues and you really want to use that drug, yeah, you might have to drive to Ashland, but you're going to be able to use it. And we, as a city, you've got so many other issues that you're having to deal with, and finances. I don't know that you really want to take that one on either. And I would encourage you not to take it on right now and not to wait and see what happens in Ashland. Table it. Thank you.
Is Brandon Davis here?
I also want to discuss about psilocybin services in Grants Pass. Councilor Vanessa, I want to say thank you. Your last discussion on the psilocybin services, you expressed that you had dug into reading Measure 109, you know, saying that the meetings were open to the public, mentioned that there was already 49 pages of approved laws. Yeah, and I also want to say thank you to Councilor Appel, mentioning that this medicine, this treatment should be between the physician and the client. We shouldn't say that they don't deserve this treatment in our area. It's going to be private. It's going to be between the two of them. As far as some of the other counselors made their concerns that they were worried about the cultivation of magic mushrooms in this area. As far as the city's Grants Pass goes, you saw the presentation where they dotted out, they put the same umbrella where they could not grow in these areas for various reasons, whether it be schools, libraries, etc. This currently would probably fall under your zoning as aggressive agriculture, and if you were to apply those criteria with aggressive agriculture, you'll find that there is one street in Grants Pass that would allow for the cultivation of this substance. That is Spalding Avenue, right over there by Walmart. And if there was a place for a lease, it would be about $3,500 a month, which is not going to cover your initial investment, and the profit that you make would not cover the initial investment and rent for that year. I don't think that you would have to worry about cultivation as long as you kept that a thing. Or if you wanted to open up the possibility of cultivation in the city, you would probably have to amend or address that zoning issue. Yeah, thank you again for all the considerations. Again, if cultivation was a concern for some of you that agreed that they wanted the treatment, keep zoning as it is. If you want it open, you could change that law. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Will Lucas?
Yeah, hi there. My name is Will Lucas. I do not live in Grants Pass, but I am here today to address Measure 109 as well. I just want to say thank you to the mayor, the councilors, and the staff for your time today. I understand some of your constituents have brought this issue before you, but you have already decided not to pursue an opt-out vote. I studied chemistry at Western Oregon University and poured over the research around psilocybin services during that time. When I was in school, I joined the Measure 109 campaign, where I hosted educational webinars and helped coordinate voter outreach programs. I now work for the Synthesis Institute on establishing one of the first psilocybin retreat centers in the state, and as a research consultant for a local medicinal fungi producer called Myriad Mycology. So I hope to bring those two perspectives to you. The OHA Psilocybin Advisory Board has taken 2 years to come up with regulations around this program, and they will bear the administrative duties required by it, including the regulations around and administration around cultivation centers, but it sounds like that may not be a problem for you in Grants Pass. I provided each of you with a summary of the rules around Measure 109, around what has been decided by Measure 109 specifically, and what has been determined in the OHA rulemaking process. So I invite you to go through that and just get a general sense of what this program will look like. It is tightly controlled, and it only allows psilocybin in a facilitated context. There's not dispensaries, and participants are not going to be allowed to go home until they have been certified as sober using a form that the facilitator has to fill out. That they are sober and ready to go home, and they will be driven home by a friend or family member as well. Psilocybin is pharmacologically safe. It is not addictive, actually. There is really good research on that. There are no recorded deaths despite widespread use in unsupported contexts, and studies have shown that it has great promise for PTSD, addiction, depression, and end-of-life anxiety. The risks associated are typically with people taking them whenever they are not being supported. For example, they could walk into a car while altered or something like this. But Measure 109 completely eliminates those risks because of facilitators on hand at all times. To speak to your concerns around cultivation, I also gave you a written testimony from Cameron Meeks, who is a master mycologist, whom I work for at Myriad Mycology. To put it just to put it in a cap here, Grants Pass is likely to need less than 10 pounds of mushrooms, and this could be grown in a 1,000 square foot facility in 3 months using 100 gallons of water and minimal electricity. So even if you do open zoning for cultivation, you're only likely to have 1 or 2 facilities in the entire city. Licensing and testing will be very expensive, and this is going to make it unlikely you will see any illegal grows happen in the city, simply because it's very expensive to get started, and there's no reason to risk your license. So. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve Effrink?
Hello, my name is Steve Elfrink, and I'm a Grants Pass resident. I want to thank the City Council for having the wisdom to vote in favor of allowing psilocybin services in Grants Pass. I'm a father of 4 children, ages 13, 16, 18, and 21. Making sure they have a safe and secure community is extremely important to me. I also have 30 years experience in the medical field and know the importance of bringing something to market that is safe and efficacious. I'm currently involved in different levels of psychedelic therapy, advocacy, and outreach, and will be trained and licensed as a psilocybin facilitator. I'm also someone who saved his own life through working with psychedelic medicines after standard therapeutic methods and medicines failed me. Grants Pass has an incredible opportunity to offer similar hope to others who are suffering from anxiety, depression, PTSD, and end-of-life anxiety. I know there are fears in the community that this is going to be like cannabis. The last thing I want to be part of is something that brings more harm to our community. I've seen firsthand effects of illegal grows on the land and the people here. The big thing to know is psilocybin mushrooms are not cannabis. A few things to understand about psilocybin mushrooms. Everything I'm saying is backed up by extensive research. Will has also touched on some of this. They are not addictive. They are non-toxic. Also, the other thing, they have a built-in mechanism that creates tolerance after a single dose. You cannot do mushrooms day after day and get high. They just simply don't work. You do build a tolerance. I'm going to keep some of this a little brief, but there's been over 40,000 people worldwide who have gone through studies with psychedelic medicines, including psilocybin, 1,000 published studies on psilocybin, and research has proven psilocybin is safe and effective for treating mental health issues. I'd also like to add that I was a participant in an FDA study of psilocybin in 2015 and know firsthand how psilocybin is to be handled in a controlled and clinical setting. A similar method to psilocybin administration and what is known as set and setting would be applied to the protocol recommended here in Oregon. And as a facilitator, I would be going through an OHA-approved training program. Once licensed and seeing clients, I would access psilocybin for my client through a licensed, controlled, and monitored psilocybin service center. And a typical experience with psilocybin is an inward, non-directive experience. The client is typically laying down on a couch. We're not taking them out walking around in Grants Pass. They have eye shades on, headphones to incorporate music into the experience, and my job is to simply assist them when they need help and steering them back into their experience. Typical session is going to be about 4 to 6 hours, And as Will said, a person is not allowed to leave until the medicine has worn off. Then they are picked up by a friend or family member. Clients are not allowed to simply leave on their own. And lastly, my sole purpose in doing this work is to help people who are suffering a suffering I knew firsthand. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we get our caller on the phone? No? Okay. Is there anyone from the audience who hasn't spoken yet who wanted to speak during public comment tonight? All right. We'll close public comment. And council, did anybody want to review any of the public comment tonight? Vanessa?
I'll start off with saying thank you, everyone, for sitting here for 2.5 hours and waiting to state your piece. I really appreciate that. It's always nice to have a crowd of folks come forward and state their piece. I did want to address Mr. Marion. Thank you for coming forward and sharing your experience working in that fire district. I think it highlights a fact that not many consider, is that the community is already paying for homelessness. It's just paying for it in an inefficient way. And what the city council is attempting to do through this grant process is facilitate in a more efficient way a solution to the issue that we're facing. I can assure you the program that Rogue Retreat runs, I have toured it myself. It is nothing like Skid Row. It is clean and managed. There are caseworkers on scene working directly with folks through the issues that they have. There is a myriad of rules for participation, including a curfew, so folks aren't out wandering. It's to enter the program, you have to have a referral. You can't just walk up and apply. You have to be referred from a member of the police department, or I believe the police department is now working hand in hand with a caseworker as well, so I believe that referral could come from the caseworker as well. So I just would like to assure you that it's not the same. It's apples to oranges, and the city council doesn't have a decision on the location at this time. That's not the direction that we have moved towards. I just wanted to reassure you on the program that Rogue Retreat runs and what our intention is for that.
Any further comment? Rob?
I'd like to just add a little bit more to everything Vanessa said, which I felt was very accurate. I've read a letter from the former police chief in Medford, and we've also had in council chambers Sergeant Kirkpatrick from Medford, and their experiences with the Rogue Retreat facilities over there are not in any way, shape, or form close to what you described in Skid Row in Los Angeles. Less calls for hospital referrals, generally less crime in general in the areas around the Rogue Retreat facilities. I've read that letter publicly here. I can actually show it to you if you'd like afterwards. I can pull it up. So that actually, if we want to trust the local police that have the most experience with the issue of these an urban campground and shelters and so forth, we'd have to go to Medford because we don't have one here. And their experience over there has not been negative, and it actually has been positive. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? Is that perfect?
I'm sorry, public comment is over. It's just an opportunity for the council to address concerns that were already mentioned, but you're welcome to email us or give us a call. Phone numbers and emails are on the website. Any further comments from council? Rob?
Yeah, actually, I was able to find that letter. So very briefly, if I can just, okay, from Chief Clausen, the retired police chief in Medford. I've been very pleased with the operation of the shelter and urban campground in Medford. These are not easy accomplishments, and Rogue Retreat has stepped up to the task. Rogue Retreat listened to the city and especially the police department in the very beginning and after a rough start. They have improved every year and now run a model program as low impact on their neighbors. They also have very low crime stats and calls for service at each location. This is impressive considering the mix of the clientele. I can go into greater detail if you wish. I have already provided a lot of the data with Chief Warren Hensman on this topic, so I don't want to be redundant. But again, that's from Scott Clausen, the former police chief of Medford. Thank you.
All right, any further comments? All right, Karen, how about the emails?
So there was a suggestion to purchase the Southwest Nebraska property. There was also concerns with purchasing the Southwest Nebraska property. 2 emails opposed to allowing Cybocillin services in Grants Pass. One was titled Riverside Park Neighbor. There was a request for a Take Back Our Parks petition or resolution, and 3 emails opposed to the proposed sales tax.
Thank you. All right. Next up, consent agenda. These are items of such a routine nature or without controversy that they may be approved with a single action. And as soon as we get that up on the board, we'll have our council president read through the consent agenda. Not coming up? All right, we're going to read through it without it on the screen. Ready, Joel?
Well, you cut me short, but I caught up. The consent agenda. First off, are there any other starred items people want to talk about? I assume not, or they would say something. Item A, resolution allocating $1,500 of available money to fund the Public Art of the Month feature in the Daily Courier for the next 12 months. Item B, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the C Street Endemic Street Reconstruction Project number D, Oscar 6386. Resolution amending the House Advisory Committee's membership. Resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase a replacement multi-purpose fire apparatus. Motion approving the minutes of the City Council meeting of July 20th and the minutes of the Central Business District Revitalization Task Force meeting of July 6th. And with that, I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second from Rick. And we don't discuss the consent agenda, so how do you vote? Joel?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
All right. Our next item is an urban renewal agency item, so that involves a motion to adjourn the city council meeting and convene as the urban renewal agency. Valerie?
I make a motion to adjourn as a city council and reconvene as Urban Area Planning Commission.
Second from Joel. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. We will move into our urban renewal agency meeting. And Rick, how about if we get your motion now?
I'd like to make a motion to extend our meeting past the 9 o'clock hour.
Thank you. Is there a second? Valerie, thank you. All in favor of extending the meeting past 9 o'clock, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think Brian may have just objected. Okay. That was 7 to 1, okay. He's taking staff's side on that one. There are cold drinks in the cooler. And we are now addressing urban renewal item A, awarding the Bohemian Bar and Bistro a matching URA grant. Brad, take it away.
Thank you. Apparently our projector is defunct. May need some urban renewal money or something, I don't know. So you do have in front of you the presentation here. So really what we have here is a first. It's the first time that the Urban Renewal Agency Board has received a formal request from a private property owner to utilize urban renewal funds towards a private project. So that's some of what we have here. We did include on the second page there, the Bohemian Bar and Bistro is, as you know, near the far end there of G Street at 233, and they are in the process and have been for over a year, looking to move 3 or 4 doors down on the same side of G Street there to 221. That was where Goodness Gracious Cafe was. So they have been in the process of going through the site plan review with the planning department, going through the Historical Building and Sites Commission to get approval for their facade, since that's one of the requirements of being in the historic district. They did those 2 things. The property, and you can kind of see it on slide 4 there, the yellow, sort of those 4 round pieces, those are the umbrellas. So that's the property that has sort of a patio, open patio there. That's kind of the main portion of G Street that's not actually built out with the permanent structure to the sidewalk. Slide 5 is their proposed facade, the front elevation, and then the page or slide 6 is just kind of an image of that superimposed on the existing streetscape. And then slide 7 is the floor plan. They have 2 entrances. One would be their main entrance, kind of a double door, and then there's a side entrance that would take you upstairs. So they are proposing what would be a first as well, and that's up 2nd story outdoor dining. So they have some seating on the 2nd floor, and that's what you see access there on the back side. So the grant is specifically for fire suppression, street and utility upgrades, and some SDC fees. And there was a letter in your packet from Jill Diney and Chris Campbell, the owners of Bohemian. This doesn't qualify for the brag. The brag is specifically for those projects where there are some kind of unforeseen expenses. That is not the case here. So we looked at the urban renewal area plan. We tried to identify what is it that's relevant for this project, and that's what's called out there in the red. So there's project number 9, which is the building rehab program, and then there's building project 14, which is basically improving underdeveloped land. And both of those would fit in this particular project. The slide 10 is talking about the 3 objectives of the, 3 objectives in the URA plan. Building utility infrastructure to support existing businesses is probably the most relevant. And then objective 3, leveraging the agency's financial resources to maximum extent possible. And then redeveloping or removing underdeveloped properties. And in a downtown Main Street situation, when you have a portion of a lot that's sits relatively underdeveloped, we would consider that probably eligible under that project objective 2. So the only guidance that we have in the URA plan for how much funding can go from the agency to a project is in projects 3, 4, 7, and 8, and those 4 projects are all related to industrial areas up on the north end, and they do say 25% of the total eligible expenses, most of which are going to be public infrastructure, 25% of that total for that project could be applied for URA funding. Of the other 14 projects that are in the URA, there's no guidance really today in the plan as far as how much URA funding could go to a project. So that's where you have a bit of a decision to make tonight in terms of what that amount is. Their total project costs came in about $506,000, and about $302,000 of those are actually eligible for URA funding. Some of those are other things related to signage and things would not be eligible. So they also listed some security lighting, security and storefront lighting. Well, there's a totally separate grant that the city has that's eligible for, so we took that out. That $3,500 was subtracted out because that can be applied for under non-URA money. So the three options really are, do you want to fund the request at 25%, which would be in alignment with projects 3, 4, 7, and 8 on the industrial and sort of stay consistent there? Do you want to use the 50,000 maximum, which is the BRAG, has been the BRAG maximum amount for matching grants? You could, of course, as a URA board, set your own maximum, or you could use what they are requesting, and they are requesting 85,087. So that is about 10,000 more than what the 25% figure would be. We do have in the FY23 budget, the URA budget, there's about 3.5 million capital outlay in amount in there. And as you may recall, that kind of got shifted in the last fiscal year budget to sort of be all eligible. Now you have talked about the water treatment plant debt service for some of that money, but no final decision's been made on that. So we did accept this application. So it's really at your discretion on which one of those three you want to go for in terms of funding.
Thank you, Brad. Board members, do you have any questions? Rick?
Thank you, Brad. I'm real pleased to see something go forward with making a request to try and use urban renewal funds. So I would be in support of this, but I would like to reference slide 7 and slide 4. On the floor plan, it's just a point of information. The floor plan, does that take up the entire property, or do they still, or were they able to still retain some of their parking? Are you aware of that?
The existing parking off the alley would be retained.
Oh,
Is that what you mean, off the alley?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Other questions? Vanessa?
I am not remembering where the council left off with the discussion on the water treatment plant debt service. I know we had a workshop on it, and it never came to us officially in a business meeting.
Yeah, through the budget process, we had a discussion that the 3.5 was allocated to just general capital, so it frees it up to wherever you'd like to go. And at this point in time, the urban renewal agency and or council has not had further discussion on how much of that, if any, they want to allocate towards water treatment plant.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. And it looks like there's no one here from the public to comment, so we'll just turn it back over to council, or rather the URA board for discussion. Valerie?
Yeah, as Rick, I'm also excited to see somebody come forward to start going downtown. I do happen to know that building where Goodness Gracious did have some fire issues, and that was part of the reason that, I'm sure they shut down, because they were having problems. It definitely needed to be remodeled and brought up to code. So to me, that's a great way to kick it off and get started, a local business that is near and dear to many of our hearts. I would like to stick with the 25%, just because I kind of think that's kind of what we've set, so I don't want to start having people question that down the road. So I think I would recommend that we just do the 25%, which is the 75,625. So that's where I stand.
Joel?
Great use of the funds and in the urban renewal area, and it meets the purpose of the URA funds very well. It'll increase our future tax base. So I too support the 25%. I think it's a slippery slope if we start going over that amount, and that could be I just like sticking to the 25%, and that would be analogous to what we did previously with the industrial grants.
Rick?
If we go with the 25%, which I don't have a problem with that, Are we committing ourselves for the future, or can we change that rate at any time? Because if there's lively activity on request for the urban renewal funds, we may not want to be as generous. So at that point, could we establish a cap later date, or do we need to be setting our parameters today?
Well, I can start. Maybe Aaron want to jump in, but I mean, the urban renewal area plan is yours. So I mean, you certainly can amend those. The percentage. I mean, right now, there's all the projects have a maximum amount allocated to them, and so Project 9, if that's the one that we use, then this would be taken off of that maximum amount that's in Project 9, and I believe it's around 2 million. But that's over the life of 30 years. I do think that we probably need to have a workshop continued. You had a couple of them in 2021 to talk about a more regimented approach to managing the private funding. But the way we would handle, at least my thought, is that we would take this amount, if you go with the 25% and the 75,000 off of that maximum allocated amount for Project 9, and then. So, that would just, if you get down to zero and somebody comes in, you mentioned a slippery slope. I mean, if it's zero, then they can't apply anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian, then DJ?
What is the amount for Project 9? Do we have that? Well, while you're
I'll have to
looking.
look it up, yeah.
I think this is a good use of urban renewal dollars. I do think the board needs to be mindful of stretching these dollars as far as we can. This is a project that is going to happen whether we, give the 25% or a lesser amount. I think I would probably be in favor of setting something up to where it's kind of a merging of the 25% with the Bragg grant cap of $50,000. So it's 25% up to $50,000 for this type of project, which is still going to give them a sizable amount to work with, and also it's going to stretch the urban renewal money a lot farther. I know we have some other big projects that we want to get done with urban renewal, and I know that this is the very first one, so I'm inclined to play it a little more conservative and have a $50,000 cap with the 25%. Thank you.
DJ?
Sure, yeah, I think there's wisdom to that, and if this was mentioned before, my apologies. Now, the anticipated costs are used for the 25%, but the actual cost will be based on actual expenses. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
it's still
so
reimbursement.
So that 25% could be more or less, but likely it's very hard to estimate projects' costs. You could just trust me on that one. But I think there's wisdom in talking about a theoretical cap. I'm okay with the 25% anticipated, but not really allowing it to get out of control. That could be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more. So entertaining a cap, I think, would be wise, but initially based on anticipated expenses, 25% seems reasonable.
Further discussion? Rob?
Yeah, I too am in favor of a cap for, I mean, expenses could they could go up 25 or 50%, so then we're on the hook for a lot more. So a cap to me makes a lot of sense as well.
Joel?
One of the things about the cap from the Bragg grant, it doesn't take into account inflation. And so what was a cap and a valid cap, I don't know, when was that cap put in place? 5 years ago? And if you were building a house today versus 5 years ago, it's kind of like counselor stipends. if you get paid $50 a month, which was a lot back when I was 20 versus $500 now, which is probably less money than $20 was then. So I would go with a little larger cap just to account for the inflation. I don't think the Bragg cap accounts for that in terms of really trying to encourage urban renewal and increasing our tax base.
Rick?
I'm also in favor of the 25% and setting a cap at some level. And I think as discussion goes tonight, it can be realized that we can raise the cap in the future as the fund becomes healthier and more vigorous with the money coming in. But at this point, it is somewhat limited because it's just in its infancy. Thank you.
Brian?
I'm going to go ahead and just make a motion to approve the resolution awarding Bohemian Bar and Bistro matching urban renewal agency grant for the property located at 221 Southwest G Street, funded at a level of 25% of eligible costs up to a cap of $55,000.
All right, second from Rick. Discussion on that motion? Valerie?
Excuse me, I think you should cap it higher than that. I think 25% is, if that's what we're advertising, we cap it at that amount, $75,625. If they go over, then they go over and they pay the difference. But we pay on the amount of money that they turn to us in right now, because that's what they're speculating, that we pay the 25%, which is $75,625. I don't want to cap it lower. I think, once again, we're trying to encourage people to use this, and we're trying to, in a sense, advertise it and get people out there to do it. So I think that you really do want to, in the beginning at least, be generous to see something happen, because that's what we need to see, is we need to have evidence of something happening out there to make it happen more.
Brian?
Well, this is going to be a great first poster child project for urban renewal, whether we give $55,000 or $75,000. So why don't we just save $20,000 and move on?
Is there further discussion? Okay, so the motion right now is to approve the reimbursement grant up to 25% of expenses with a cap of $55,000. And Brian, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Joel?
I don't think the cap is large enough. Culverts cost me double what they cost 2 years ago. I appreciate the movement, but I think it needs to be a little higher, so I'm going to vote no.
Kurt?
All right, I'm going to say yes.
Rick?
Yes?
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
No.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
No.
And the motion passes 5-3. Any further discussion on this matter with the URA? Sounds like we may need to have a further discussion about a long-term program one of these days. How about we, Vanessa?
I move to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting and reconvene as the Grants Pass City Council.
Thank you. Is there a second? Valerie? Okay, all in favor of adjourning the URA meeting, reconvening the city council meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're back to the council. Matters from mayor and council. What do you have, DJ?
So just to preface this by, we received a stack of memos. I'd really like to see this, because I think this is a really good direction that we're going in and getting information in memos rather than, you know, having the meetings. I think that's a great trajectory. But that being said, I'm fond of them, and I think they're all deserving of attention. Starting with the memo regarding the zoning transition overlay. Brief synopsis is basically DLCD with the combination of middle housing is going to allow the council to eliminate that zoning transition overlay, which has become highly contentious with the development code. I would like to see that discussed amongst council, of course, after you educate yourself on the memo. It's really good information. I think, golly, to have a circumstance where DLCD said, sure, yeah, we'll back off of that. I think that's a very uncommon circumstance. So this is a formal request to get this one on the agenda books.
Okay, are there other counselors interested in having a workshop on this topic?
I just
Okay.
Okay, and then next, we got the skate park. I'm sure, as we all know, that it's in need of some love. And I think that the general crack filling and maintenance, I think, is appropriate at this time, and as mentioned, replacement in 5 to 7 years. You know, I don't imagine that we're poised to replace at this point, but some kind of plan to replace in that amount of time would be appropriate in conjunction with some repair efforts. I think this is a relatively simple decision for council to make, but if necessary, it might warrant a meeting, but leave that up to you. But this is also a formal request to pursue that.
All right. How do you see that? Do you want it at a business meeting?
I honestly really see this as something that I'd be surprised if it was contentious.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's something we need to do, and it's relatively simple in execution.
So I think a business meeting, I'd say just put it on a business
Are
meeting.
you
I don't
good?
think we need
Is
to hash it
everybody
out.
good with just moving that to a business meeting?
So at this point, we're asking if council wants us to move forward with an RFP to
Yeah.
get the services. So it doesn't even require a business meeting until
Oh, it
you want to
doesn't?
approve that. We just need general direction. Do you want us to go ahead and publish an RFP for the services at the skate park?
Sure, I guess honoring, typical procedure, how would you propose that we move forward with something like that, Sarah?
I don't know, we're having
make
kind
a
of an
motion?
agenda review discussion here at a
Yeah,
time that's
you're
not really
right.
agenda review, so it's a little different in general. I guess if you just need council approval to move forward with an RFP. I don't know if you all have had a chance to read the memo and everything.
Council would ultimately be the one approving the RFP once it was,
So it just needs
the
to come back to us at
responses.
a business meeting, right?
Yeah. Don't you, we
We've
have
got
to,
one ready to go. Council would, once we publish it, you'd get responses, you'd be approving the contract associated with the RFP.
well, to me, I mean, and I did get a chance to read it earlier, so I do know, what it's saying, and I don't want to step on anybody who might not have had the chance to read it yet, but at the same time, I feel that it pretty well explains the fact that we just need, we don't have the money for 1.5 million to redo something. 5 to 7 years from now, we might, but I think it's been important for us to do the skate park and do something with it. So I would assume that you'd put the RFP together, and it would have to come into a business meeting anyway to approve the RFP. I mean, to approve it being done, correct? So I would say that we could just give you permission to go out for the RFP, and then we'll approve it once we have it at a business meeting.
Brian?
Right?
So the whole reason this memo needed to be created was because I reviewed the RFP and I had some concerns about the scope of work being done, specifically with regards to the finish of the surface, the concrete surface. Over 20 years, the surface has degraded and it has gotten rougher, and it has fallen out of what would be considered skate park standard surface finish. This RFP does not remedy that situation. And I've reached out to a few people that use the skate park. I actually just did that today, hoping to get some feedback from them on how vital that is to the renovation of the park. And I haven't heard back from them yet. So I personally am not comfortable putting the RFP out until I get a little bit more information on how critical that piece of the renovation is. So I'm not quite ready to give staff the green light at this point.
So normally with an RFP, it comes up at what, a business meeting that we look it over and say, good, put it out there?
There isn't a usual with RFPs.
Yeah.
It just depends on the project. Sometimes council wants to review the RFP and the scope of the RFP before it goes out. Sometimes staff just does an RFP and provides you with the responses to the RFP, and then you award it based on the recommendation or your review criteria. So it could go either way.
All right.
But it sounds like there might be enough interest that we need a workshop on the skate park RFP.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Let's do that.
Yep.
The bet.
And one more, this won't be official request or anything, I just wanted to call to light the McLaughlin Whitewater Design Group in 2005, that memo, the 037-2022. Read it, consume it. I think it's my opinion still, it's time that we do something awesome, and this is awesome. So look forward to having a conversation about that in the future.
All right. Any other items from council? All right.
Are we into just the comments?
We're just, yeah, in the
Okay.
mayor council comments. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to remind everybody, or tell everybody, that the Chamber of Commerce this Friday it's Lemonade Day. And Lemonade Day is where they have like almost 200 kids who participated, and they've all built their little lemonade stands, and there's going to be all sorts of them on G Street. So that's between 3 and 6 on Friday afternoon. So would be a great time to go down and check out and look around town and stop and support. A lot of the work was done at the Boys and Girls Club. A lot of families are involved, but it's a great way to support local kids out there who have gone through the economic classes and learned about setting up a business. And so anyway, so that'll be a really fun event. And then of course it's First Friday. So 2 big events coming up this Friday in Grants Pass.
Awesome. Anything else from council? All right, not to steal Karen's thunder, but we do have the fair coming up next week. If anybody wants to volunteer for the fair booth, they're looking for volunteers, and you can run the really fun Grants Pass trivia game where you win cool prizes. Public can come down, meet your city staff and counselors. Maybe I'll even drop by. We'll see. All right, staff. JC.
Upon the passage of the agenda last meeting and the revisions of the investment policy, staff has issued an RFP for investment advisory services.
Cool. Anything else?
Just super quick, I did want to let the council know we were unsuccessful in obtaining a BRIC grant this go around. We will be working with FEMA and state emergency personnel to find out why our application wasn't considered or scored higher. So that was a little bit of a bummer. We found that out this week. On a lighter side, we were notified by the offices of Merkley and Wyden that we have been awarded a $2 million. It's not final yet. It has to make it through the other section of the federal government, but we're real close. $2 million in appropriations for the water treatment plant. So one bad, one good.
Aaron?
Yeah, we have First Friday, of course, which was mentioned last First Friday. The city welcomed everyone at our Welcome Center on 6 and G, served some ice cream up, had great participation. This month, we're participating again in First Friday. One of the things we're doing is we're partnering with emergency management. They're going to be there to help get people signed up for Citizen Alert as one of our information activities there. So.
Kurt?
I just want to bring up one last thing. As I noticed JC and Brad, I'm seeing a trend among staff. And I'm just wondering, Aaron, if you're going to get in on this or what?
It's not happening. No, it's not.
All right, any other staff? No? Karen, you don't want to make a second poll for volunteers?
Well, actually, I have quite a few so far, so we're doing good.
We're doing all right. Okay, in that case, the meeting's not yet over. There's more fun to be had if we could just entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session. Vanessa?
I move to adjourn into executive session.
Second, Val, thank you. All in favor of moving into executive session?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let me dig out. The council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing those subjects previously noticed for this executive session, which are real property transaction negotiations. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660 and